Chapter 1438. Let's go. Black Ant Battle Sage made a prompt decision and left. He was neither a mid-level demigod nor Yi Qin. Right now he was no match for Yi Qin. If he was hit by the Sky Saint weapon, even if he didn't die, he would be crippled. This was why he wanted the Sky Saint armor. With it, even a mid-level demigod wouldn't be able to hurt him in a short time. Let's go. Seeing Black Ant Battle Sage leave, Battle Sage Hada and Battle Sage Zhanghe fled in a hurry. Before, the four of them weren't a match for Yi Qin. Now only the two of them were left. There are fewer and fewer shortcomings. Exhaling, Yi Qin didn't chase after them. As the three Supreme Sword Intense broke through to mid-ninth step, Yi Qin knew that the gap between him and those truly frightening heaven-defying sovereigns was getting smaller and smaller. Half of his current strength was due to the Sky Saint artifact, Firmament Sword. Without it, and before his sword intent broke through, he would at most be a mid-level heaven-defying sovereign. As for the truly frightening heaven-defying sovereigns, their cultivation base was at least at the quasi-demigod level. This was something Yi Qin couldn't hope to reach. However, with the God Power Crystal, he felt that he wasn't far from breaking through. After collecting the God Force crystals that escaped from Battle Sage Wintercloud's body, Yi Qin now had 10 God Force crystals in his body. Up until now he had only used up 1% of one God Force crystal. There were countless palaces in the Divine Ruin. The bigger the palace, the more God Force crystals there were. But at the same time, the lion statues outside were stronger. As for how many God Force crystals there were in the Divine Ruin, Yi Qin couldn't guess. The Divine Ruin was simply too big. From the outside, it looked like it was only 1% of the size of the 18 domains. In fact, the Divine Ruin had its own space inside, which was bigger than the 18 domains. After dozens of years, the number of God Power crystals in his body had reached 40. His whole body was like a small sun. Wherever he went, a halo of light would shine. In the past few decades, Yi Qin had already refined 10 Divine Force crystals, and his martial Yuan soul was faintly glowing with a faint golden light. With one more step, his silver Yuan soul would transform into a gold Yuan soul. This was a palace that was over 1,000 meters tall. The two stone lions outside the palace looked extraordinary, like the mounts of gods. When Yi Qin approached, the stone lion on the right let out a loud roar, and its huge body suddenly became alive. The sound of blood flowing was like a monstrous wave, emitting a domineering aura that looked down on the world. Immediately after, the stone lion on the left resurrected. The two stone lions that had come to life attacked Yi Qin from the left and right. So powerful. Yi Qin felt an extreme pressure. The strength of these two stone lions was almost the same as his. Their bodies were impervious to swords and spears, and it was impossible to break them. After fighting for several days and nights, Yi Qin finally destroyed the bodies of the two stone lions. At this moment he was close to his limit. Fortunately, he had the Divine Power Crystal to quickly nourish him. Pushing open the palace gate, Yi Qin walked in. 1 Divine Power Crystal, 2 Divine Power Crystals. 5 Divine Power Crystals floated in the palace, and in addition, surrounded by the Divine Power Crystals, there was a whirlwind full of spirituality. Wind Law Fragment. Generally, law fragments would not appear in the void. They would only appear in the Saint Artifact Source, or in the Soul Sea of Supremes and Demigods. Under normal circumstances, law fragments would automatically dissipate once they left the Saint Artifact or the Soul Sea. There was no way to preserve them for a long time. The appearance of a wind law fragment here was really beyond Yi Qin's expectations. Putting away the Divine Power Crystal, Yi Qin sized up the wind law fragment. He did not know how to use the wind law fragment. Reaching out his hand, Yi Qin tried to touch the wind law fragment. Chi 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 chi. As soon as the seemingly gentle wind law fragment touched Yi Qin's finger, it instantly went berserk. The violent whirlwind cut Yi Qin's finger, and the power was no less than a heaven-defying supremacy's all-out attack. Frowning, Yi Qin quickly withdrew his hand. With his strength, he did not need to be afraid of the wind law fragment, but he did not want to exhaust the power of the wind law fragment. Without a source of power, its power would be depleted every time it exerted its power. This was different from the water law fragment in Yi Qin's Soul Sea or the law fragment in the Heavenly Saint Artifact Source. That's right, the Heavenly Saint Artifact. Yi Qin's eyes lit up, and he pulled out the Firmament Sword. The Firmament Sword contained the law of water, the law of wind, and the law of space. Yi Qin hoped to use the law of wind to attract the wind law fragment. The tip of the Firmament Sword slowly came into contact with the wind law fragment. To Yi Qin's surprise, the wind law fragment did not resist too much, as if it was treating the Firmament Sword as a stranger. Yi Chen did not dare to be too hasty, so he gave the firmament sword and the wind law fragment enough time to cultivate feelings. Gradually, Yi Chen could feel that the wind law fragment no longer resisted the firmament sword, and it truly treated the firmament sword as a partner. After a slight hesitation, Yi Chen inserted the firmament sword deep into the core of the wind law fragment, and then activated the firmament sword with all his might, activating the power of the wind law. The wind law fragment subconsciously resisted for a while, and then it was thrown into the firmament sword, disappearing without a trace. Success. Yi Chen could not believe it, and he quickly probed the firmament sword source with his soul force. In the firmament sword source, there was a water droplet, 2 whirlwinds, and a transparent crystal. The wind law fragment has become 2. Yi Chen let out a breath. He had succeeded. Although he had not comprehended the wind law fragment and could not fully utilize the power of the wind law fragment, the firmament sword itself could absorb the power of the wind law fragment to provide Yi Chen with combat power. It was just that it could not be used directly. Swish. Holding the firmament sword in his hand, Yi Chen swung it. The sword was unbelievably fast, illusory, and difficult to capture with one's consciousness. The speed and power of the sword have increased a lot. This should be the effect of the wind law. The firmament sword, which was not very light, was as light as a feather in Yi Chen's hand. As he swung the firmament sword, it would provide a powerful force. Time passed quickly and soon another few decades had passed. This time Yi Chen arrived in front of a 1,200-meter tall palace. Originally, with Yi Chen's strength, he was not the opponent of these 2 stone lions. However, after the firmament sword had fused with a wind rule fragment, his strength had once again increased to a whole new level. Now he was barely able to fight on par with the 2 stone lions. After a week, Yi Chen had shattered the bodies of the 2 stone lions. Pushing open the palace door, Yi Chen held his breath. There were 6 divine force crystals and a water droplet floating in the palace. The wind law fragment. Apart from the firmament sword and the black tortoise sacred armor, Yi Chen's soul sea also contained the wind law fragment. In other words, Yi Chen could completely absorb the wind law fragment and directly increase his combat power. In the primal chaos battlefield, danger and opportunity coexisted. It depended on whether one had the strength to seize the opportunity. Chapter 1439. Putting away the 6 divine force crystals, the halo around Yi Chen's body became even more brilliant. However, at this moment, his attention was completely focused on the water law fragment. Any law was broad and profound. To fully comprehend it, it would take an endless amount of time. The law comprehended by a heaven-defying supreme was at most 1% of a complete law or even less. The water law fragment in front of him was about the same size as the one in Yi Chen's soul sea. If he could successfully absorb it, the power of the law of water would double. In this way, even if he encountered someone who had comprehended a powerful law, Yi Chen would have the power to fight. The law of water filled the air. Yi Chen's palm was wrapped in a layer of water as he slowly approached the water droplet in the void. Buzz. The water droplet rippled as if it was testing. When it sensed that Yi Chen had something that attracted it, the ripples also covered Yi Chen. The entire interior of the palace seemed to have become a world of water, separated from the outside world. Soaking in the water, Yi Chen completely released his power of the law of water, intertwining with the power of the law of water released by the water droplet. Gradually, the water droplet moved towards the space between Yi Chen's eyebrows. After an unknown amount of time, the water droplet stuck to the space between Yi Chen's eyebrows, and half of it had already entered his flesh. If one could see through it, they would find that there was a water thread connecting the water droplet in Yi Chen's soul sea and the water droplet between his eyebrows. The water thread gradually tightened, and the distance between the 2 water droplets was getting closer and closer. When the 2 water droplets came into contact with each other, an earth-shattering sound came from the palace. The violent water current tumbled and shook, and Yi Chen, who was in the water current, was surrounded by an absolutely calm zone. The water current tumbled more and more violently and the palace shook. After a long time, everything came to an abrupt stop. In the palace, Yi Chen forcefully exhaled a mouthful of turbid air. With a flip of his wrist, a huge water ball formed. Whether it was the speed of formation or the quality, it was far better than before. The power of any law is broad and profound. Although the law of water is inferior to the other laws in terms of offense, its effects are not inferior at all. Yi Chen suddenly turned into a water man. Without a sound, the water man scuttled around the palace. His speed was twice as fast as before. I wonder what level my strength is at now. Seriously speaking, the heaven-defying supremes were divided into two major levels. The first level of heaven-defying supremes could fight against beginner demigods, while the second level of heaven-defying supremes could fight against mid-level demigods. There was a huge difference in strength between the same level. For example, some could only fight against the most ordinary beginner demigods, while some could kill beginner demigods. This was the difference between the first and second level. No matter how powerful a beginner demigod was, he would have to flee in panic if he encountered a mid-level demigod. However, the second level of heaven-defying supremes could fight against mid-level demigods. Yichen did not know if he had reached the second level because he had no reference. Before this, Yichen estimated that he should be at the peak of the first level. He was not sure if he had reached the peak of the first level, but the difference should not be too big. The closer he got to the core of the miracle, the more heaven-defying supremes and demigods there were. Yichen was not a saint. He took the initiative to attack a few times and kill the heaven-defying supremes and two beginner demigods. The number of divine power crystals in his body had reached 90. The vast and dazzling halo could be seen and felt from far away. It was like the moon in the night sky with nowhere to hide. However, Yichen was not the only one who was eye-catching. There were many who were as eye-catching as he was, and some were even more eye-catching than him. The number of divine power crystals in his body was estimated to be hundreds. Rumble, none of them were easy to deal with. They all looked for prey to kill. The strong looked for the weak and the weak looked for the weaker ones. Of course, there were many fights between the strong. Yichen was a little speechless. He thought he was already very strong, but he was still targeted by a heaven-defying supremes. I am Supremacy Silver Radiance. It is your honor to die by my hands. This heaven-defying supremacy was tall and perfect. His whole body was silver as if it was made of silver. Without a doubt, he was the heaven-defying supremacy of Emperor Sky Cosmos. Emperor Sky Cosmos was one of the top existences in countless cosmos, slightly better than ancient Cosmos and Sky Tyrant Cosmos. I am Honorable Swordsman Green Lotus. Please enlighten me. Since he could not avoid it, Yichen had to prove to his opponent that he was not a pushover. Die. A golden armor appeared on Supremacy Silver Radiance's body, and a golden spear appeared in his hand. What made Yichen squint was that the golden spear in his opponent's hand was not an ordinary golden spear. The body and the tip of the spear were covered in flames. Metal Rule and Fire Rule. Dual Rule Supremes. No wonder he is so arrogant and confident. Yichen frowned. Last time he had seen a supremacy who had comprehended two rules. However, he had run far away and did not have the chance to face him. With the flaming gold spear in his hand, Supremacy Silver Radiance thrust forward. The explosive speed was as fast as a spark. The sharpness of the metal rule and the explosiveness of the fire rule were perfectly combined, releasing an even more shocking lethality. The firmament sword was drawn in an instant, and Yichen met it with his sword. In terms of attack, the water rule was not as good as the metal rule and the fire rule. However, after absorbing a fragment of the water rule, Yichen's level of the water rule was very high, and he could use softness to overcome hardness. Supremacy Silver Radiance felt his flaming gold spear was like it was stuck in a swamp. It was soft and powerless with less than 10% of its power left. He was shocked and thought, what a powerful water rule. Looks like you must have absorbed a fragment of the water rule. Otherwise, the water rule could not be so powerful. Supremacy Silver Radiance took back his flaming gold spear and said, not bad. Yichen nodded. You're lucky. If I had your luck, you would have been dead by now. Supremacy Silver Radiance was very envious. He had been in the Divine Ruin for so many years, but he had only gotten one fragment of the Earth Rule, which was useless to him. If he had gotten a fragment of the Metal Rule or a fragment of the Fire Rule, his power would have increased a lot. Among the sky-defying supremes in level 2, he would hardly have a rival. Instead of looking for trouble with Yichen, Supremacy Silver Radiance turned around to look for other sky-defying supremes or demigods. My power should be at level 2 now, but it's not stable yet. Yichen knew that the reason why Supremacy Silver Radiance left was not because he could not defeat Yichen, but because he felt that the reward was not worth the effort. They were both sky-defying supremes in level 2. Supremacy Silver Radiance could defeat Yichen, but it was not possible for him to kill Yichen. The water movement skill of the water rule was not something to be trifled with. The center of the Divine Ruin was a huge round building. The building had one floor above ground and many floors below. Surging waves of God power spread out from the bottom of the building. It was the waves of God blood. Chapter 1440. Above ground level. Huge yellow figures patrolled the area. Once they discovered an intruder, they would attack as a group. These yellow figures were extremely powerful, and their defense was also extremely high. Normally, it would take a very long time for a first-stage heaven-defying Supreme Master and an ordinary elementary demigod to kill one of them. The Earth Law Guards were completely formed by the power of the Earth Law. Unlike the Earth Law fragments, the Earth Law Guards couldn't absorb them. As Yi Qin moved forward, Firmament Sword was like a formless stream. The Earth Law Guards would disintegrate at the slightest touch. His Water Law realm had doubled. Yi Qin's Water Law Sword art had already surpassed its original realm. All of you scram? In the distance, a dazzling light suddenly rushed over. Along the way, a large number of Earth Law Guards were vaporized. Some heaven-defying supremacy and demigod who couldn't dodge in time were even more miserable. They didn't even have the time to scream before they exploded with light, their divine power crystals sucked away. Coincidentally, Yi Qin was right in the path of the dazzling light. Not good. Yi Qin quickly turned into a waterman and flew away. 1/5 of the waterman was vaporized, and the rest flew far away before stopping. Hey, interesting. Forget it, I'll spare your life. The dazzling light didn't slow down and continued forward. When it reached the stairs leading to the first underground level, a yellow figure that was 10 times taller than the ordinary Earth Law Guard stopped it. Of course, it only stopped it for a moment. However, this moment allowed Yi Qin to clearly see the other's appearance. It was a heaven-defying supremacy from the crystal universe. Its whole body was made of transparent crystals, and the divine power halo it emitted was 10 times brighter than Yi Qin's. Roughly speaking, it probably had more than 1,000 divine power crystals in its body. Otherwise, it wouldn't be so dazzling. However, the dazzling light didn't come from the divine power crystals, but the light law power, which was one of the top laws. In less than half a breath's time, the Earth Law Guard leader melted and turned into a beam of light, disappearing from the stairs. It's the Crystal Universe's Light Law Guard leader. He's even stronger than the rumors say. As expected of one of the 5 great supremacies of the Primal Chaos battlefield. Each of them is heaven-defying. Compared to them, we can't be called heaven-defying supremacies. Everyone discussed animatedly, their tones filled with respect. Exalted Light, one of the 5 great paragons? Hearing everyone's discussion, Yi Qin was very surprised. This Light Supreme Being was the strongest heaven-defying Supreme Being that Yi Qin had ever seen. Compared to him, Silver Radiant Supreme Being was much weaker. He had never thought that there were 4 heaven-defying Supreme Beings at this level. They were called the 5 Great Supreme Beings. That was close. Luckily, he didn't target me. Losing 1/5 of his body was not a big deal to Yi Qin. It was just that he had used up some of his sword energy. The profoundness of the water traversing technique was not something that ordinary people could understand. Of course, the main thing was that his opponent was not targeting him. The Law of Light was much faster than the water traversing technique in terms of speed. Otherwise, it would not be one of the top laws. After the leader of the Law of Earth Guards was obliterated by the Sovereign of Light, it condensed again not long after, and continued to block the staircase entrance. Soon Yi Qin arrived at the top of the stairs and engaged in an intense battle with the Law of Earth Guard leader. After spending 5 breaths of time, Yi Qin successfully passed through, and arrived at the first underground floor. He did not see the Light Supreme Being on the first underground floor. Obviously, the Light Supreme Being had already passed through this floor. With his strength, he could have done it in a short time. The first floor above ground was for the Law of Earth Guards, and the second floor below ground was for the Law of Fire Guards. The Law of Fire Guards were all made of fire, and their explosive power was extremely strong. Fortunately, Yi Qin's Law of Water just happened to restrain the Law of Fire, so it was easier to deal with the Law of Fire Guards than the Law of Earth Guards. The second underground floor was guarded by the Law of Water Guards. The Law of Water Guards were very hard to deal with. Sometimes they would turn into a pool of water to ambush, sometimes they would turn into a whirlpool to entangle the intruder, and sometimes they would break apart and condense into water arrows to shoot. Open. A flash of lightning flickered, and quickly surpassed everyone like a lightning blade. It's the Tiger Fong Supreme Being. Amazing. Probably only the 5 great Supreme Beings are stronger than him. Tiger Fong Supreme Being comprehended the Law of Thunder. Although the Law of Thunder isn't one of the top laws, it is undoubtedly a powerful law, much stronger than the fundamental laws. There were also many heaven-defying sovereigns and demigods on this floor, and everyone started discussing. The majority of heaven-defying sovereigns had similar foundations. For example, they were all demigods, mid-stage 9th order martial will and heart force perfection realm. In comparison, Yi Chen's foundation was slightly weaker, and he had not reached the demigod realm yet. However, he had the firmament sword and the black tortoisane armor, especially the firmament sword. After absorbing a law of wind fragment, the sword's power increased greatly, and it made up for the lack of cultivation. Other than Sky Saint artifacts, the true embodiment of a heaven-defying sovereign strength was the power of the laws. There were strong and weak laws, and from high to low they were classified as peak laws, powerful laws, and fundamental laws. Those who could comprehend peak laws were monsters among monsters, and there was nothing they couldn't do. As for those who could comprehend powerful laws, they were elites among monsters. Seriously speaking, Yi Chen might be a monster among monsters. Up until now, he had only cultivated for tens of thousands of years, while many heaven-defying sovereigns had cultivated for hundreds of thousands of years or even millions of years. Half a day passed, and Yi Chen arrived at the third underground floor. The ones guarding the third underground floor were the Law of Wood Protectors. The Law of Wood Protectors were all rooted in the ground, and the branches on their bodies were extremely soft, like whips. When countless whips came, even Yi Chen would be exhausted. Other than that, the Law of Wood Protectors were extremely hard to kill. As long as the roots weren't completely destroyed, they would immediately recover. After spending a full 3 days, Yi Chen finally made it through. If the Law of Water Protectors were said to be hard to deal with, and the Law of Wood Protectors were said to be hard to kill, then the Law of Metal Protectors on the fourth underground floor were very ferocious, and their power was very concentrated. Fortunately, the heaven-defying sovereigns here all had divine power crystals in their bodies, which could quickly replenish their energy and allow them to fight for a long time. A week later, Yi Chen arrived at the fifth underground floor. This floor was much more difficult in comparison because the ones guarding this place were the Law of Wind Protectors. The Law of Wind was one of the powerful laws, and it wasn't something that the fundamental laws could compare to. The Law of Wind Protectors moved very quickly, almost on par with Yi Chen. Their attacks were very sharp, comparable to the Law of Metal, and the difficulty of dealing with them was close to that of the Law of Water. If it wasn't for the fact that he wanted to train himself, Yi Chen would have already left. The fifth underground floor was guarded by the Law of Wind Protectors, but who knew what kind of freakish protectors would be on the sixth underground floor, or even the seventh underground floor? He wasn't the Tiger Fang Sovereign, nor was he the Light Sovereign. Even if there were any treasures down there, he wouldn't be able to snatch them. His only motivation was to increase his cultivation. The other heaven-defying sovereigns were all demigods, and it was as difficult as ascending to the heavens to become an elementary demigod. At the very least, it would be very difficult to do so in a short period of time. But he wasn't a demigod yet, so he could completely rely on divine power crystals to break through in a short period of time. As long as he continued to fight, he would be able to accelerate his breakthrough. Chapter 1441. After spending 3 months, Yi Chen passed through the fifth underground floor protected by the Law of Wind Guards. After spending a year, Yi Chen passed through the sixth underground floor protected by the Law of Poison Guards. After spending 5 years, Yi Chen passed through the seventh underground floor protected by the Law of Bones Guards. After reaching the eighth underground floor, Yi Chen was finally stuck. Although there were fewer law guards the further down he went, and it was usually a one-on-one battle, the law guards on the eighth underground floor were Law of Shadows guards. Even in a one-on-one battle, Yi Chen would find it difficult to defeat them. The Law of Shadows guards were shadows. This shadow could be illusory and no attack would be able to hit it. It could also be solid and release sharp attacks. In order to defeat the Law of Shadows guards, one had to attack when the opponent was in a solid state. Otherwise, even if the attack was 10 times stronger, it would be useless. Facing the elusive Law of Shadows guards, Yi Chen did not dare to be careless. He was in his most cautious state at all times. The extreme pressure turned into extreme motivation. Coupled with the numerous God Force crystals in his body, Yi Chen's cultivation finally broke through to the quasi-demigod level. His martial Yuan Shen became a quasi-gold Yuan Shen with a faint golden color. The moment he broke through, Yi Chen could clearly feel that his senses and reaction speed had greatly increased. The originally indistinct Law of Shadows guards were no longer as elusive as before. It was as if he could grasp their every move. A sword flower lit up in the void. Yi Chen's sword pierced through the throat of a Law of Shadows guard. How profound! As expected of a quasi-gold Yuan Shen. Yi Chen's eyes lit up. At this moment, not only had his battle prowess greatly increased, but his senses and reaction speed had also reached a limit. It was as if he had the ability to predict. The moment his opponent turned solid, he stabbed his sword at his opponent's vitals, killing him in one hit. If it was before, he would not have been able to find or grasp this opportunity. After becoming a quasi-demigod, the Law of Shadows guards were no longer a match for Yi Qin. Soon Yi Qin passed through the 8th underground floor. Then the 9th floor, the 10th floor, the 11th floor, the 12th floor. Yi Qin was like a hot knife through butter, rushing to the 13th underground floor in one breath. The ones guarding the 13th underground floor were the Darkness Elemental Guards. The Darkness Elemental Guards were one of the top elemental guards, not something that powerful elemental guards could compare to. At this moment, there were more than 10 cosmic lifeforms trapped on this floor. There were heaven-defying sovereigns and mid-level demigods. These cosmic lifeforms were much stronger than the previous Yi Qin. Yi Qin guessed that these people must have arrived a long time ago because he had never seen any of them before. The 13th underground floor was different from the previous floors. There were many stairways here, and in front of each stairway was a Law of Darkness guard. If one wanted to enter the next floor, they only needed to kill one of the Law of Darkness guards. Of course, although one only needed to kill one Law of Darkness guard, the difficulty was definitely 100 or even 1,000 times higher than the 12th underground floor. Without sufficient strength, one might be trapped here forever like these people. Not in a hurry, Yi Qin observed the battle between the Law of Darkness guard and these cosmic lifeforms for a while. Yi Qin discovered that the Law of Darkness guard had two extremely terrifying abilities. One was to transform into darkness, rendering attacks ineffective just like the Law of Shadows guard. The other was to contain a suction force. Moves and techniques are already useless. Only absolute strength is the most reliable. Yi Qin frowned. The Law of Darkness guard was too powerful. If he wanted to defeat it, his attack had to reach a certain level, just like Light Supremacy or Thunder Tusk Supremacy. Billowing Sword. Yi Qin used a killing move right off the bat. A surging wave of sword light blasted toward the Law of Darkness guard. Wah! The Law of Darkness guard instantly transformed into darkness. The surging wave of sword light entered the darkness and disappeared without a sound. The next moment, darkness condensed, and the Law of Darkness guard grabbed at Yi Qin. Its palm contained an extremely powerful suction force, as if the universe was about to be destroyed and enter the Great Dark Age. I don't believe you can withstand many billowing sword attacks. Yi Qin used the billowing sword again and again. The Law of Wind in the Firmament sword increased his sword speed, and his attack frequency more than doubled. 1 week. 1 month. 1 year. Gradually, Yi Qin discovered that the Law of Darkness guard strength was weakening. 5 years had passed, and the Law of Darkness guard finally shattered, unable to condense again. He turned his head to look at the others. A few cosmic lifeforms had disappeared, and a few new faces had appeared. They were probably the same as him and had made it through. Of course, they might have died in the hands of the Law of Darkness guard. 14th underground floor. The Law of Light guard. The Law of Light guard's strength was much higher than the Law of Darkness guard's. Not only could it transform into light, but its movement and attack speed were also quite fast. It was a great threat. Here Yi Qin saw Supremacy Thundertusk. In addition, he also saw 7 other cosmic lifeforms, 3 heaven-defying supremes and 4 mid-level demigods. Supremacy Thundertusk was indeed in existence second only to the 5 supremes. His attack power was very terrifying. Yi Qin estimated that he might not be afraid of Supremacy Thundertusk, but he was definitely not a match for Supremacy Thundertusk. After all, there was a natural gap. Thundertusk comprehended the Law of Thunder, while Yi Qin comprehended the Law of Water. Apart from Supremacy Thundertusk, the other 3 heaven-defying supremes could not be underestimated. They all comprehended powerful laws, namely the Law of Wind, the Law of Ice, and the Law of Blood. As for the 4 mid-level demigods, they were even more terrifying. Their foundations were too deep, and they were not afraid of the Law of Light guard's attack at all. Yi Qin did not see Supremacy Thundertusk, and he guessed that he must have made it through this floor. After all, the strength of the 5 supremes was publicly acknowledged. Only by facing the top laws would one know how powerful they were. Haha, everyone, I'll make a move first. Supremacy Thundertusk slashed open the Law of Light guard's body, stepped into the stairway and disappeared. Damn it, the next floor will definitely have God blood and law fragments. The remaining cosmic lifeforms were all anxious, especially the 4 mid-level demigods. Being able to reach this step, they were all experts among the mid-level demigods. The 5 supremes might be stronger than them, but it would be extremely difficult to kill them. If they could get their hands on the god blood, their strength would undergo a qualitative change. They might even become powerful demigods in an instant and comprehend laws. The martial primordial spirit of a mid-level demigod was a gold primordial spirit, and it had reached the mid-level gold stage. Once it went berserk, there would be turbulent energy waves everywhere. Finally, a mid-level demigod passed this floor and also entered the stairway. I can only take it one step at a time. Yi Qin chuckled bitterly. He had made multiple breakthroughs and his power had improved by leaps and bounds. But there would always be someone more powerful than him. It would not be easy to get a share from so many powerful warriors. Of course, it was also impossible for Yi Qin to back off. After all, he had already come this far. Fortunately, his cultivation had reached the quasi-demigod level, and he had some ability to protect himself when facing a terrifying existence like Supremacy Thundertusk. Chapter 1442. It took Yi Qin 10 years to defeat the Law of Light Protector. At this moment, the number of people on the 14th underground floor had increased to 10. There were 5 heaven-defying supremes and 5 mid-level demigods. Whoosh! With a flash, Yi Qin entered the stairway and headed to the next floor. 15 floors underground. A ball of blood floated in the air, slowly spinning and wriggling, emitting a supreme aura. Before this aura, Yi Qin felt as if his breathing had stopped. From the outside to the inside, from his body to his soul, there wasn't a single part of him that wasn't suppressed. The entire 15th floor seemed to have turned into a world of mercury, incomparably heavy. Divine blood. Yi Qin's eyes flashed. The blood of a true god was extremely precious, and there were only 2 ways to obtain it. First, the true god would voluntarily or be forced to separate the god's blood. Second, when a true god died, the god's blood would scatter everywhere. If one could refine a drop of God's blood, the effect would definitely be greater than 100,000 or even 1,000,000 divine power crystals. If the god's blood made Yi Qin extremely excited, then the nomological fragments around the god's blood also made Yi Qin extremely tempted. There were 15 law fragments around the god's blood. They were metal, wood, water, fire, earth, wind, poison, white bone, shadow, darkness and light. The law of metal fragment was a metal ball the size of a longan. It emitted a faint golden light. The golden light was not dazzling, but it gave off an extremely sharp feeling. It was as if being illuminated by the golden light would immediately blind one's eyes. The fragment of the law of wood was a thumb-sized seed. The seed was emerald green and brimmed with endless vitality. The space around the seed was affected by this vitality. Hundreds of flowers bloomed and vegetation grew. The law of water fragment was the size of a fist, and it was a ball of water. Looking at the ball of water, Yi Qin felt as if he had arrived at a boundless sea of chaos. The waves surged violently, and the waves covered the sky, causing one to feel insignificant. The law of fire fragment was a cluster of flames. The fragment of the law of earth was an irregular piece of yellow soil, thick and boundless. The wind law fragment was a powerful hurricane, more than 10 times larger than the one absorbed by the firmament sword. The law of poison fragment was a drop of purplish-black poison. The white bone law fragment was a piece of white bone that seemed to have grown out of the void. The fragment of the law of shadow was faintly discernible. If one didn't look carefully, they wouldn't be able to see it. The law of thunder fragment was a lightning mark. From time to time, it would release lightning and thunder, rumbling and flashing. The law of darkness fragment was pure darkness, a darkness that devoured everything. The light law fragment was a dazzling light that repelled all impurities. It wasn't as deep as the darkness, but it was more tyrannical and pure. At the moment, 5 people had arrived on the 15th underground floor. They were 3 heaven-defying supremes and 2 mid-level demigods. The 3 heaven-defying supremes were Supreme Radiant, Supreme Thunder Fong, and a supreme covered in white bones. Of the 2 mid-level demigods, one was short and had goat horns, and the other was a 3-headed, 6-armed ancient life form of the universe. Supremacy Light was absorbing the law of light fragments, Supremacy Thunderfang was absorbing the law of thunder fragments, and the other Supremacy Heaven-defying was absorbing the law of white bone fragments. Based on their speed, it would take them at least 1,000 years to completely absorb the law of light fragments. After all, the law of light fragments here were simply too big. As for the 2 mid-level demigods, they were absorbing the god's blood. They could only absorb a bit of God's blood at a time, and this bit of God's blood was just a drop in the ocean compared to the total amount of God's blood. Yi Qin's arrival did not cause any commotion. The 5 of them did not even look at Yi Qin. There was no need to engage in a meaningless fight. Law of Water Fragment. Yi Qin stared at the fist-sized Law of Water Fragment. This Law of Water Fragment was too big. It was dozens of times bigger than the one Yi Qin had absorbed before. It was sparkling and translucent, emitting a lustrous glow. After absorbing this fragment of the Law of Water, my Law of Water will increase by at least 10 times. Dozens of times the power of the water rule. This was not a dozen times increase in battle prowess, but tens of thousands or even hundreds of thousands of times. His battle prowess would probably soar directly to the level of a high-level demigod. Of course, whether he could completely absorb it was another matter. No one knew how much power of the law a heaven-defying supreme could have. Floating up, Yi Qin slowly approached the fragment of the Law of Water. What? The Law of Water sensed Yi Qin's approach and a wave of water rippled over, enveloping Yi Qin. Yi Qin realized that after his cultivation broke through to the quasi-demigod level, the power of the Law of Water had doubled. It was much easier for him to absorb the Law of Water fragment, and it did not cause much repulsion or resistance. Bit by bit, Yi Qin slowly absorbed the power of the Law of Water fragment. 20 years passed. 50 years passed. During this period, Honorable Light opened his eyes once and frowned. He had been here for more than 100 years, but the power of the Law of Light he absorbed was very little. As time passed, the power of the Law of Light he could absorb was also decreasing. 100 years passed. Honorable Light stopped absorbing the power of the Law of Light. He could no longer absorb the power of the Law of Light. His martial yuan spirit had reached its limit. If it was not for the divine force crystal in his body, he would not be able to fight for a long time. Otherwise, his martial yuan spirit would collapse and he would die from the power of the Law of Light. Since I can't absorb the power of the Law of Light, I'll absorb the God's blood first. To Honorable Light, the God's blood was also very important. He might be able to use the God's blood to become an elementary demigod. Once he became an elementary demigod, his strength would definitely be among the powerful demigods or even stronger. Who is it? Seeing that someone came to absorb the God's blood, the two mid-level demigods quickly looked over. Me? Why would I have an opinion? Honorable Light glanced at the two of them. These two mid-level demigods were definitely powerful mid-level demigods. After absorbing so much God's blood, they should have gained a lot of benefits. So, it's Honorable Light. The two of them did not dare to offend Honorable Light, so they closed their eyes again. On the 150th and 180th years, the skeleton-covered Honorable Against Heaven and Honorable Thundertooth stopped absorbing the power of the Law of Light and started absorbing the God's blood. The two mid-level demigods did not say anything as they felt that the two of them were not to be trifled with. On the 200th year. On the 300th year. On the 500th year. What surprised the five was that Yi Qin had been absorbing the power of the Law of Light. His soul and martial yuan spirit seemed to have no limit. Could it be that his absorption is very slow? No, the fragment of the Law of Light has shrunk quite a bit, but his absorption speed is not slow at all. Even Yi Qin himself could not understand why he could continue absorbing. One must know that when he first started to comprehend the power of the Law of Light, he had also suffered from the backlash of the power of the Law of Light, and he did not dare to use it too much. On the 700th year, Yi Qin finally could not continue absorbing the power of the Law of Light. His soul and martial yuan spirit had reached a saturation state and could no longer withstand the more powerful power of the Law of Light. Naturally, Yi Qin turned his gaze to the God's blood. Chapter 1443. The amount of God's blood was sufficient. The five of them had not finished absorbing it even after such a long time. There was still more than half left. God's blood contains the essence of a true God's God power. Whether or not I can become a primary demigod in the primal chaos battlefield depends on it. Yi Qin was very clear that there would be more experts in the primal chaos battlefield in the later stages. This was because the vast primal chaos battlefield could not only have one God's relic. There would definitely be other God's relics or opportunities. If you did not improve, others would. Don't think that the five supremes were very powerful. As long as one of them became a primary demigod, the five supremes would have to step aside. Of course, it was also possible for the five supremes to become primary demigods. At that time, no one would be able to defeat them. Yi Qin did not wish to die in the primal chaos battlefield and become someone else's stepping stone. Therefore, he had to seize every opportunity to strengthen himself. As long as he was the strongest, the primal chaos battlefield would be like his backyard. Only he could kill others and no one would be able to kill him. In this way it would be much easier to find Su Jing and Murong Qingqing. The legendary heaven realm should be filled with dangers. It is imperative to become a primary demigod. Besides the primal chaos battlefield, the legendary heaven realm also made Yi Qin feel a bit of pressure. It was not wrong to work hard to improve his strength. Seeing Yi Qin looking at the god's blood, the two mid-level demigods were a bit anxious. They were mid-level demigods. The amount of god's blood they needed to become advanced demigods was far more than what the supremes needed to become primary demigods. However, these supremes were not ordinary people. The speed at which they absorbed the god's blood was very fast. It was almost 1% of what they needed. Don't think that 1% was a lot. In fact, if converted into years, it might be hundreds of thousands or even millions of years. With one more Yi Qin, they would have to cultivate for hundreds of thousands or millions of years. Honorable Light, the amount of God's blood is limited. If you Supremes want to become primary demigods, it will be much harder than ordinary demigods to become primary demigods. A mid-level demigod transmitted his voice to Honorable Light. Supremacy of Light sneered, "You want to kill me with a borrowed knife?" Yi Qin had been absorbing water law fragments for a total of 700 years. No one present dared to say that they could kill Yi Qin. Even the Light Overlord did not have the confidence to do so. Although the water law was a fundamental law, the more one comprehended it, the more terrifying it would be. His light law was inferior to Yi Qin's water law in terms of realm. You've misunderstood. We just want to cooperate with you and get rid of this brat first. Then we'll get rid of Tiger Fang Sovereign and Bone Devil Sovereign, another mid-level demigod explained. Oh. The Exalt of Light's expression did not change as he sent a voice transmission. The two of you are mid-level demigods and have absorbed much more god blood than us exalted heaven-defying exalts. Why don't I choose to work with the three of them to deal with the two of you? Haha, Honorable Radiant, even though you are one of the 5 honorables, it would still be difficult for you to kill a mid-level demigod, let alone me and Battle Sage Liaotian. That's right. We mid-level demigods have rich sources. Our foundation is more than 10,000 times that of you exalted heaven-defying exalts. If you want to kill us, you have to be many times stronger than us. Of these 2 mid-level demigods, one was the ancient hoof battle sage from the Earthpiercer Cosmos and the other was the ancient multiverses battle sage Liaotian. Both of them were experts among mid-level demigods. In a one-on-one situation, they were indeed inferior to the Exalt of Light and perhaps even Tiger Fang Sovereign. However, it was almost impossible for the two of them to kill them. Even if they stood still and did not put up any defense, it would still take a long time for them to be killed. This was the terror of mid-level demigods. You guys are very confident. However, what you said makes sense. Thinking about how difficult it was to kill mid-level demigods, the Exalt of Light frowned. Several thousand years ago, he had chased after an ordinary mid-level demigod. His strength was many times stronger than his opponent, but he still failed to kill him after several years. Perhaps he could have killed him if he had spent a little more time, but he was impatient. It was too much of a waste of time. Killing a mid-level demigod was not worth it. The ancient Hoof Battle Sage and Liaotian Battle Sage before him were not ordinary mid-level demigods. The difficulty of killing them was more than 10,000 times higher. However, this person has absorbed the law of water fragment for 700 years. I wonder what level his strength has reached? Thinking of Yi Qin, the Exalt of Light felt some regret. If he had known that Yi Qin had such amazing potential, he would have killed Yi Qin long ago. At that time, killing Yi Qin would not require much effort. Exalt of Light, what are you afraid of? Even if we can't kill him, he can't do anything to us. We won't know until we try. All right. The Exalt of Light agreed. Just as the ancient Hoof Battle Sage had said, he might not be able to do anything to Yi Qin, but Yi Qin would not be able to do anything to him either. The power of the Law of Light was not only reflected in combat strength. In addition to communicating with the Exalt of Light, the ancient Hoof Battle Sage and Liaotian Battle Sage had also informed the Tiger Fang Supremacy and the Bone Demon Supremacy. The Bone Demon Supremacy had agreed, but the Tiger Fang Supremacy had not. After this person is dead, it might be my turn. The Tiger Fang Supremacy sneered in his heart. He planned to help Yi Qin when he could no longer hold on. Not for others but for himself. Yi Qin did not seem to notice the forced strangeness. He rapidly approached the god blood, ready to take a share. Brat, get lost. At this time, the ancient Hoof Battle Sage, Liaotian Battle Sage, the Exalt of Light, and the Bone Demon Supremacy launched a joint attack at Yi Qin. The ancient Hoof Battle Sage sent out countless hoof prints, each one seemingly engraved in the void. The Exalt of Light's 6 arms each slashed out a flaming saber light. The Exalt of Light's attack was the most magnificent, like a sun, shooting countless rays of light at Yi Chen. The Bone Demon Supremacy put his hands together and separated, shooting countless bone spears at Yi Chen. In the current Primal Chaos battlefield, the four were undoubtedly the top and most terrifying characters. If the four of them joined forces to attack one person, then that person would die without a doubt. Facing this desperate situation, Yi Chen's eyes were solemn, but also excited. After absorbing the Law of Water fragment for 700 years, he did not know what level his strength had reached. This was the perfect opportunity. However, he did not dare to be careless. Once he could no longer hold on, he would immediately leave and give up on the god blood. It's not certain who will get lost. With a roar, Yi Chen turned into a water man. Shortly after, the water man stirred up monstrous waves that swept in all directions, submerging more than half of the 15th floor. The rumbling waves caused the 15th floor to slightly tremble, as if a peerless beast was about to awaken. As soon as the ancient hoof battle sage's hoof prints fell into the water, their speed sharply decreased and they lost more than half of their power. Liaotian battle sage's flaming saber light gradually extinguished, emitting a faint glow. The Bone Demon Supremacy's bone spear was very sharp, piercing through 90% of the waves and almost hitting Yi Chen. As for the Exalt of Light's light ray, it was the most terrifying, almost piercing through the waves in an instant. However, it was ultimately blocked by Yi Chen's firmament sword. What? The four were shocked. This was their strongest attack, but it could not do anything to Yi Chen. The blood of a true god was a treasure of heaven and earth. It contained the purest divine power. Unfortunately, other than powerful demigods, no one could directly convert the ownerless divine power into their own divine power. Most people below the level of a powerful demigod could only use the ownerless divine power to increase their own cultivation. They could not convert it directly, and there would definitely be a lot of waste in the process. After continuously absorbing the god blood, Yi Chen gradually understood the profoundness of divine power. This kind of power was definitely the ultimate power, the most violent power. However, the power of laws was different. It was the power of rules, the way to use power. It was like a technique that could increase the power of one's power by many times. So that's how it is. One of the requirements to condense divine power is to have the light of the soul. Above the heart sword realm was the sword of the soul, which was also the light of the soul. Only the light of the soul could control all kinds of power and condense divine power. Otherwise, divine power would easily collapse and be unable to be preserved. After understanding a part of the profoundness of divine power, Yi Chen's horizons had been broadened. A part of the obstacles to cultivation also seemed to have disappeared. Crackle. In the process of absorbing the god blood, Yi Chen's spirit body continued to improve, from mid-rank 9 to late rank 9. His strength increased greatly, and his body seemed to have endless power. This was different from Sword Yuan. The two were different kinds of power, and they would both become a part of divine power in the future and have their own uses. Other than that, Yi Chen's Green Lotus Sword domain realm was also slowly improving, from early rank 9 to mid-rank 9. In fact, the reason why Yi Chen improved so quickly was because his foundation was weak, and he hadn't reached a very high realm. On the other hand, the Light Supremacy and the others had already reached a very high realm in all aspects, so they couldn't improve much in a short period of time. The only improvement they could make was a breakthrough in their cultivation and becoming a low-ranked demigod. Finally, Yi Chen's Green Lotus Sword domain broke through from early rank 9 to mid-rank 9, and his strength improved again. Of course, Yi Chen also knew that although the Green Lotus Sword domain had improved by a level, it wasn't very useful. At the current stage, his opponents were all terrifying people, and the mid-rank 9 sword domain could only cancel out the opponent's domain. At most, it could suppress it slightly, but it wouldn't have much of an impact. The key was still to rely on absolute strength. However, if the Green Lotus Sword domain could break through to late rank 9, he would be able to easily suppress others. He had to take it step by step. In the blink of an eye, 1,000 years had passed, and there was still 60 to 70% of the god blood left. During this period, a dozen people had made it from the 14th underground floor to the 15th underground floor. Unfortunately, they were very unlucky, and they were killed by Yi Chen's group of 6 before they could even absorb the fragments of the laws. They didn't want to let others have a share, and they didn't want to raise a tiger that would bring them trouble. After all, once one absorbed a large amount of the laws, it would be very hard to kill them. Yi Chen was a living example. Another 1,000 years had passed, and there was still half of the god blood left. Haha, how can I miss out on absorbing the god blood? On this day, a figure came from the 14th underground floor to the 15th floor. It was a heaven-defying supreme filled with endless death aura, and his eyes were emitting a frightening light. The Dead Supreme. The light supremacy revealed a look of fear. The Dead Supreme was one of the 5 supremacies, and what he comprehended was the death law, which was one of the top laws like the light law. Moreover, from the looks of it, he should have obtained a lot of benefits in other places. The death aura was extremely dense, and his realm was no lower than the Light Supreme. Let's deal with him together. The Light Supremacy suddenly said. All right. Everyone including Yi Qin agreed one after another. Kill. The 6 of them unleashed a powerful attack, blasting at the Dead Supreme. Hee, you want to kill me? In your next life. I comprehended the death law and I'm already in a state of death. How can you kill me? The Dead Supreme did not care about the attack that was blasting at him, and he took it head-on. In this way, the Dead Supreme also joined the ranks of absorbing the god blood, and the number of people became 7 from 6. On the 4,000 years, only 40% of the god blood was left, and the battle broke out again. This time, it was Yi Chen's group of 5 against the Ancient Hoof Battle Sage and the Burning Sky Battle Sage. The main reason was that the 2 absorbed the god blood too quickly. The 5 decided to spend some time to kill the 2, even if it took them 1 or 2,000 years. Chapter 1445. Do you really think we're pushovers that you can bully? Humph, since you want to expel us, then don't even think about absorbing the divine blood. The 2 were fearless. They had absorbed most of the divine blood and their cultivation had improved rapidly. Their gold primordial spirits had reached the peak of mid-stage, which was many times stronger than before. Kill. Supremacy of Light was the first to attack the 2. Countless rays of light shot out. Piff piff. The 2 retreated with difficulty, blood dripping from the corners of their mouths. Supremacy of Light's attacks were very domineering. Each ray of light was extraordinarily powerful. They had no way to fight back. The Sovereign of the Dead's attack was much more bizarre. He rubbed his hands together, and thousands of poisonous snakes made of black mist pounced at the Greenhoof Battle Sage and Scorching Sky Battle Sage, leaving shallow marks on their bodies. These shallow marks were like living creatures, slowly wriggling and absorbing the vitality and aura of the 2. Of course, mid-level demigods were mid-level demigods. With a flash of light, all the shallow marks disappeared as if they had never existed. The Sovereign of the Dead was not surprised by this. The Ancient Hoof War Sage and the Burning Sky War Sage were peak mid-level demigods. Other than high-level demigods, no one could easily kill them. It would take a long time to kill them. If Supremacy of Light's attacks were domineering and Supremacy of the Dead strange, then Yi Chen's attacks were mighty and endless. In terms of offensive power, even Light Supreme was inferior to Yi Chen. In the void, the blue sword light converged to form an ocean wave that battered Ancient Hoof Battle Saint and Burning Sky Battle Saint, forcing them to retreat without a trace of power to counterattack. As for Tiger Fang and Bone Devil, they were much weaker than the 3, but they could more or less exhaust the Ancient Hoof War Saint and Scorching Sky War Saint's origin energy. Their usefulness was not to be underestimated. After 100 years, the Ancient Hoof War Saint and Scorching Sky War Saint's auras had weakened significantly. Damn it. After 100 years of beating, the Ancient Hoof Battle Saint's eyes were almost spewing fire. I'll let you be arrogant for now. Let's see how long you can keep attacking. Scorching Sky Battle Saint said fiercely. After 1,000 years, the 2's auras had weakened by more than 30%. It's actually so hard to kill? Even though they had mentally prepared themselves, Yi Chen and the others were still shocked. Originally, they had estimated that they would be able to kill the 2 of them in 1,000 years. Unexpectedly, the 2 of them had only weakened by 30%. Although the 2 of them would become weaker as time passed, it would definitely take more than 2,000 years to completely kill them. What surprised Yi Chen and the others even more was that in the next 500 years, the auras of the 2 war saints did not decline. Instead, they grew stronger and recovered to 80% of their original strength. As it turned out, although the 2 of them had been in a state of constant beatings, it had also played a role in tempering themselves. The divine blood they had absorbed earlier had quickly turned into nutrients to replenish their bodies. This won't do. If this continues, they might not die. Instead, we will be exhausted to death. The Exalt of Light frowned. That's right. They're using us to transform the power in the god's blood, Yi Chen said as he exhaled. Why don't we take turns to attack them and the rest will absorb the god's blood? The Venerable of the Dead suggested. How should we distribute it? Bone Devil Supreme's eyes flashed. It's very simple. 3 people attack and 2 people absorb the god's blood. We'll rotate once every 100 years. In the 100th year, Yi Qin, the Venerable of the Dead, and the Venerable of the Dead attacked the War Saints, while the Venerable of Light and the Venerable of Tiger Fang absorbed the god's blood. Seeing this situation, the War Saints and the Venerable of the Dead's eyes almost popped out of their sockets. Previously they were still in the mood to waste time with Yi Chen and the others, but now they had completely lost the mood. After a long time, the remaining god's blood would definitely be absorbed, and there would be no share for them. They still wanted to rely on the god's blood to advance to high-level demigods. Damn it, die for me. The War Saints of the Dead and the Venerable of the Dead erupted with their strongest combat strength. Before this, they were only ordinary combat strength. Unfortunately, Yi Qin and the Venerable of the Dead were not to be trifled with. They easily suppressed the two, and no matter how much they roared, they could do nothing. After 100 years, it was the Venerable of Light, the Venerable of the Dead, and Yi Qin attacking the two, while the Venerable of the Dead and the Venerable of the Dead absorbed the god's blood. Because only 2 people could absorb the god's blood at a time, it was still not Yi Chen's turn this time. But it didn't matter. He would be compensated later, and no one was willing to suffer a loss. Soon 1,000 years passed. The god's blood shrank slightly, but there was not much change. The 5 were, after all, heaven-defying supremes. Their efficiency of absorbing the god's blood was far lower than that of mid-level demigods, especially when 3 of them had to deal with the War Saints. Too slow. Altogether, 6 or 7,000 years had passed. Yi Chen felt that the efficiency of absorbing the god's blood was too slow. At this rate, it would take at least tens of thousands of years. The higher the cultivation, the faster the absorption. It has little to do with strength. Yi Chen thought. Unknowingly, Yi Chen had been in the 15th underground floor for 9,000 years. With a scream, the Battle Saint of the Dead instantly turned into a ball of golden flames, burning. This was the burning of the gold martial path Yuan spirit. The golden ashes danced in the air, and the next moment, they returned to nothingness. The Battle Saint of the Dead had fallen. After spending 5,000 years, the 5 finally killed the Battle Saint of the Dead. This was mainly related to the distribution. Every 100 years, 2 of the 5 would be able to rest and absorb the god's blood. The War Saint of the Dead and the Battle Saint of the Dead were constantly fighting and had no time to rest. Moreover, they couldn't find the exit to the 15th underground floor, so they couldn't even escape. In the 9,500th year, the War Saint of the Dead was forced to his limit. Faint golden sparks flickered on his body, a sign that the gold martial path Yuan spirit was burning. Bastard, I can't accept this. The War Saint of the Dead roared at the sky. The battle prowess that erupted shocked even the Venerable of Light, the Dead, and the Bone Devil Supremes. This was the final radiance of the Dead and was no small matter. Come on. The Venerable of Light sped up. The Venerable of Dead and the Bone Devil Supremes nodded. As long as the War Saint of the Dead was taken care of, they could calm down and absorb the god's blood. In any case, their absorption speed was very slow, so they didn't need to worry about not having enough god's blood to absorb. As for the future, no one could be bothered. Swoosh. The War Saint of the Dead was instantly engulfed by the golden flames. Careful. Suddenly, the Venerable of Dead seemed to have discovered something and disappeared from his original position. The Venerable of Light's reaction was a bit slower than the Venerable of Dead's, but the Venerable of Light was faster and immediately retreated. Only the Bone Devil Supremes couldn't react in time and was struck by a powerful flaming hoof print. The Bone Devil Supremes didn't even have time to groan before disappearing into nothingness. Chapter 1446. This aura? In the distance, the Light Sovereign and the Dead Sovereign solemnly looked at the golden flames. Within the golden flames, a figure gradually became clear. Pop. The flames extinguished, revealing the figure of the Greenhoof War Saint. At this moment, the Greenhoof War Saint was clearly taller, his powerful muscles almost bursting through his clothes. His arms were so thick that they seemed capable of tearing the sky apart. The pair of goat horns on his head were especially prominent, flashing with a cold light. Whoosh, 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 waves of terrifying aura spread out from the Greenhoof War Saint. The Light Sovereign and the Dead Sovereign clearly felt a strong pressure, their breathing becoming heavier. High-grade demigod? The Dead Sovereign's expression was unsightly, and the Light Sovereign was not much better. Above high-grade demigods were powerful demigods. There was no need to mention powerful demigods. Not only did they have divine power, but they also had the power of laws. All below a powerful demigod were ants, including high-grade demigods. But no matter what, a high-grade demigod was still a high-grade demigod, not something a mid-grade demigod could compare to. The Golden Yuan spirit had reached the late stage. The Light Sovereign and the Dead Sovereign were not afraid of any mid-grade demigod. Even if they could not win, they could at least escape. But against a high-grade demigod, they had no confidence. Ah! The Greenhoof War Saint laughed until tears flowed down his cheeks. High-grade demigod, I actually became a high-grade demigod. Is this true? With that, the Greenhoof War Saint clenched his right hand. A shockwave burst out. Pop pop. The Light Sovereign and the Dead Sovereign were blown away, each vomiting blood. Haha, it's true. The Greenhoof War Saint laughed wildly, his expression excited. After becoming a demigod, each advancement was as difficult as ascending to the heavens. If one was lucky, they might be able to advance in a few million years. If not, it might take tens of millions or even hundreds of millions of years. This was especially true for mid-grade demigods to become high-grade demigods. Even with the help of divine blood, the Greenhoof War Saint did not think that he could become a high-grade demigod in the primal chaos battlefield. But he did not expect that he would break through and become a high-grade demigod in this desperate situation. Of course, this was mainly because he had absorbed a lot of divine blood, which provided him with sufficient nutrients. I have to thank you for all this. If you did not force me into a desperate situation, I would not have become a high-grade demigod so quickly. The Greenhoof War Saint regained his composure and looked at the Light Sovereign and the Dead Sovereign with a teasing expression. The Light Sovereign and the Dead Sovereign, pupils constricted. Run. The two of them turned into a ray of light and a wisp of black mist, quickly escaping. The 15th underground level was very large. Every inch of space had been transformed by the divine blood. It was like a small universe. Trying to escape? The Greenhoof War Saint didn't do anything, but his location began to shake. A moment later, space twisted as he appeared behind the radiant autarch and punched. Just as the deep hoof print was about to engrave itself onto the Radiant Supremacy's body, the Radiant Supremacy abruptly transformed into a golden sun, turning from a corporeal body into an incorporeal body. The hoof print pierced through the golden sun, causing it to shatter. It then reformed into the body of the Sovereign of Light. However, his face was extremely pale. Relying on the law of light, he had withstood the attack of the Greenhoof Battle Saint, but a high-grade demigod was too powerful. Even in his incorporeal form, he was still heavily injured. It was easy to imagine that once he returned to his physical form, he would undoubtedly die. How enviable. The law of light is even greater than I imagined. The ancient Hoof War Saint was indignant. He hated all heaven-defying supremes for being able to comprehend laws in advance. This was too unfair. Swordsman Azure Lotus, the situation isn't looking good. Tiger Fong and Yi Chen had already noticed the changes in the Greenhoof War Saint. Tiger Fong said in a low voice. You find the exit first. Take the chance to kill the Radiant Supremacy and the Dead Supremacy, Yi Chen said. What about you? Tiger Fong looked at Yi Chen. I plan to give it a try. Yi Chen felt that the three Supreme Sword Intents were showing signs of a breakthrough. After coming to the Primal Chaos battlefield, the three Supreme Sword Intents had already broken through once, from early stage to mid-stage 9th rank. This greatly increased his strength. He originally thought that it would be impossible for him to continue breaking through in the Primal Chaos battlefield. Even if he wanted to break through, he would probably have to wait until he became an elementary demigod. However, after absorbing 9,000 years of divine blood, the three Supreme Sword Intents had the possibility of breaking through again. Of course, this was mainly because the three Supreme Sword Intents existed in Yi Chen's Soul Sea at the same time, creating a resonance effect. If there was only one Supreme Sword Intent, it would be impossible for him to break through so quickly. Give it a try? Alright, I'll take my leave first. Sensing that Yi Chen wasn't joking, Tiger Fong nodded and quickly left. I don't think I can escape even if I try to escape now. I might as well give it a try. If there was an exit, Yi Chen would not hesitate to escape from it. Unfortunately, the exit to the 15th floor had not been found yet. Wasting time searching for an exit was unacceptable to Yi Chen. Floating near the god's blood, Yi Chen closed his eyes and continued to absorb the god's blood. Run. Why aren't you running anymore? Poo-pee-you? Poo-pee-you-pee-you-pee-you-pee-you. The ancient Hoof War Saint laughed maniacally as he pierced through the golden sun and black mist again and again. The laws of light and death were indeed powerful. In terms of power, The ancient Hoof War Saint was at least 10,000 times stronger than the Radiant Sovereign and King Sovereign. Alas, he still couldn't kill the two in a short time. He could only heavily injure them and wear down their martial nascent spirits. Ancient Hoof War Saint, why are you so ruthless? If you can spare me, I'm willing to become your servant. The Sovereign of the Dead said humbly. Comprehending the law of death made him cherish his life even more and would not easily give up. Servant? Sorry, I don't need it. I just want to see you die. The ancient Hoof War Saint grinned and continued to attack. Again and again. No. The golden sun burst into millions of rays and the roar of the Radiant Sovereign could be heard. Unfortunately, the rays could no longer condense and gradually disappeared into the void. One of the 5 sovereigns, the Radiant Sovereign, had fallen. The Sovereign of the Dead's heart tightened and he frantically fled. In terms of survivability, the law of death was much stronger than the law of light, but the difference in strength was too great. The Sovereign of the Dead still could not escape death. The black mist dissipated and a black seed fell. Crack. The ancient Hoof War Saint shattered the black seed. The law of death was strange and unpredictable, so he did not think that the Sovereign of the Dead was completely dead. Sure enough, the moment the black seed shattered, the Sovereign of the Dead screamed and stopped abruptly. After killing the Radiant Sovereign and the Sovereign of the Dead, the ancient Hoof War Saint began to chase after Tiger Fong. A year later, Supreme Tiger Fong fell. In the end, it was Yi Qin who did not take any action who survived. You're very lucky that you didn't take any action. That's why I left you for last. The ancient Hoof War Saint walked towards Yi Qin step by step, each step causing the void to tremble. Indeed, Yi Qin's 3 supreme sword intents had broken through to the late stage of the 9th rank. The higher one's sword intent was, the harder it was to improve. This was especially true for supreme sword intents. Once they broke through, their combat prowess would increase greatly. One had to know that at the late stage of the 9th rank, one was only one level away from the peak of the 9th rank, which was the limit of sword intent. Of course, a heaven-defying sovereign was still a heaven-defying sovereign. If it was any of the 5 sovereigns who had reached the late stage of the 9th rank, they still wouldn't be a match for the Green Hoof War Saint. However, among Yi Qin's 3 supreme sword intents was the Immortal Sword Intent. It was called Immortal and had an indestructible attribute. Apart from that, he also had the Black Tortoise Sacred Armor and the Immortal Sword Physique. With the continuous improvement of the Immortal Sword Intent, Yi Qin's Immortal Sword Physique reached the 17th level, allowing him to contend against an elementary demigod's attack. A late-stage 9th rank Supreme Sword Intent? The Green Hoof War Saint narrowed his eyes. He didn't comprehend a Supreme Martial Intent, but a lower-grade one. Even so, he still couldn't break through to the late stage of the 9th rank and was stuck at the peak of the mid-stage of the 9th rank. Yi Qin, a mere heaven-defying sovereign, had actually reached the late stage of the 9th rank. The Green Hoof War Saint didn't know whether he should admire or be jealous of Yi Qin. Even if you can hold on for a while, I don't believe you can hold on for 100 or even 1,000 years. The more stunning Yi Qin's performance was, the more the Green Hoof War Saint couldn't let Yi Qin live. Otherwise, once Yi Qin became an elementary demigod, no one would be able to stop him. Wisps of golden flames ignited on his body, and the aura of the Green Hoof War Saint increased by 1,000 times. A demigod's secret art? Yi Qin was startled. The Green Hoof War Saint punched at Yi Qin. This punch was incomprehensibly fast. Even time and space began to reverse, and Yi Qin's reaction time was stretched. BFFF. Unprepared, Yi Qin spurted out a large amount of blood. Countless cracks appeared on his body, and he was instantly gravely injured. Even a large portion of his martial Dao nascent spirit was obliterated. No matter how powerful the Immortal Sword Intent was, it couldn't perfectly defend against extreme combat power. He actually burned his gold martial Dao nascent spirit to obtain destructive power? Yi Qin didn't dare to be careless. He activated the law of water and instantly turned into a water man. At the same time, ripples appeared around him as if he was in a world of water. The next moment, the Green Hoof War Saint attacked again. The world of water was instantly pierced through, and the water man Yi Qin turned into was also destroyed. Chapter 1448. The Woodlaw Fragment was a thumb-sized seed. The seed was emerald green and brimming with endless vitality. The space around the seed was affected by this vitality, causing hundreds of flowers to blossom and vegetation to grow. When he was still some distance away from the Woodlaw Fragment, a dense forest blocked Yi Qin's path. The vines in the forest grew rapidly, baring their fangs and brandishing their claws. Whoosh! The world of water rippled, protecting Yi Qin. Meanwhile, Yi Qin used the world of water as a medium to sense the wood law fragment's existence. Metal gave birth to water and water gave birth to wood. When the law of water came into contact with the wood law, it suffered much less resistance. Pushing aside the vines, Yi Qin gradually approached the wood law fragment. When he was only 10 meters away from the wood law fragment, a green radiance suddenly appeared. No matter how hard Yi Qin pushed the law of water, he couldn't advance an inch. Realizing that he couldn't get any closer, Yi Qin stopped and gently pressed his right hand on the green radiance. This was the manifestation of the wood law. With the protection of the world of water, he could safely touch it. The wood law was full of vitality. Vitality could save people and kill people. For example, a heavily injured person on the verge of death could be instantly healed by injecting the law of wood. However, if a seed was planted in a healthy person, once the seed grew, it could kill the healthy person. The law of wood contained life and death. Of course, it only contained a part of life and death. The true life and death were the law of life and the law of death. Want to comprehend a second law? The green-hoof battle saint looked over with a cold glint in his eyes. If Yi Qin comprehended a second law, it would be difficult to deal with him. Whether it was a peak law, a powerful law, or a foundational law, each law had its own unique aspect and couldn't be underestimated. Even the green-hoof battle saint wasn't sure how much of a boost the two laws would have to one's combat prowess. Humph! A heaven-defying sovereign comprehending a second law is 10 times harder than comprehending a first law. I don't believe you can do it. Taking a deep breath, the green-hoof battle saint closed his eyes and didn't look at Yi Qin. Right now, the most pressing matter at hand was to absorb all the god blood and strive for another breakthrough. Once his martial will broke through to the late Ninth Order, his strength would increase tremendously. At that time, regardless of whether Yi Qin comprehended the second type of law or not, it would have no effect on him. Comprehending the law of wood was smoother than Yi Qin had imagined. Perhaps it was because he had comprehended the law of water and had reached a very high level in the law of water. In Yi Qin's perception, he seemed to see countless green dots of light. These green dots of light were very gentle, like little fairies dancing in the air. One day the green spots gathered together, increasing in number until they finally formed a green seed. The seed fell to the ground and sprouted, growing into a small tree. The small tree was weathered by the wind and rain, and it gradually grew into a towering tree. Its branches were luxuriant, and it was overflowing with green. Day after day, year after year, with the towering tree as the center and the roots of the towering tree as the link, new trees began to grow. Grass and flowers sprouted around the small tree, and the soil became abnormally fertile. As the wind blew, the seeds on the tree scattered everywhere, landing on the surrounding soil. Finally, a jungle was born. The jungle grew larger and larger, turning into a forest. The forest expanded with water, insects, and animals. Unknowingly, the forest changed the surrounding world, making the air fresher and the soil more fertile. Everywhere was brimming with vitality, cheerfulness, and relaxation. Silently, in Yi Qin's soul sea, an extremely small seed with a hint of green was gradually born. He had successfully comprehended the law of wood. Opening his eyes, Yi Qin's pupils turned emerald green. However, the emerald color quickly receded and returned to normal. This is the law of wood? Yi Qin retracted his right hand and spread it out. A green light flashed and a small tree grew out of Yi Qin's palm. The small tree rapidly grew, turning into a towering tree. The branches of the towering tree could be hard or soft. When they were hard, they were like steel. When they were soft, they were like vines. They could whip the void as they pleased, and their destructive power seemed to be even higher than the law of water. Of course, this was the initial stage of the law of water. The current level of the law of water was too high, comparable to the law of light of supremacy. The small tree in his palm vanished, and Yi Qin's body suddenly turned green, turning into a green shadow. The green shadow contained infinite vitality. Yi Qin had a feeling that even if he was hit countless times, he would be able to instantly recover. It wouldn't consume his martial Dao Yuan spirit at all, only the power of the law of wood. In terms of survivability, the law of wood is definitely not inferior to the powerful laws. It is only slightly weaker than the peak laws. It had been more than 10,000 years since he came to the primal chaos battlefield, and he had seen a lot of laws. As for the characteristics of each law, he more or less had some understanding. In terms of survivability alone, the wood law was extremely outstanding. What? The green-hoof battle saint was awakened by the spreading law of wood. Seeing Yi Chen's transformation, he couldn't help but be dumbfounded. Did he really comprehend the law of wood? So simple? Bastard, this is too unfair. The Greenhoof Battle Saint was extremely jealous. Chapter 1449. As time passed, Yi Chen felt as if he had turned into a ball of fire with no specific shape. Wherever the wind blew, he would run. Whenever he saw a tree, he would burn. When he saw a river, he would burn. When he saw a starry sky, he would also burn. At first, it was just a ball of fire, but later, it became a super flame that could destroy an entire galaxy, forming a world of its own. Visible sparks could be seen on Yi Chen's body, but there was no smoke. Boom. Yi Chen suddenly burst into flames. Even his eyeballs were burning, turning into pure flames. Law of fire complete. In his soul sea, a small flame was born, releasing heat that could not be ignored. Even faster. Yi Chen was moved. It took him about 200 years to comprehend the law of wood, but it only took him 150 years to comprehend the law of fire. However, there were 3 great laws in his soul sea which added a lot of pressure. When he first comprehended the law of water, Yi Chen felt that it was too much. His soul sea could not contain it, but now it could contain 3 great laws. Yi Chen understood that this was because he had made multiple breakthroughs in the primal chaos battlefield. His martial Dao Yuan Shen had reached the quasi-gold level, and his sword intent and heart sword had also improved. All aspects had improved a lot, especially after comprehending the law of wood. Not only did it not increase the pressure, but it also made Yi Chen more energetic, constantly nourishing his soul sea. Activating the law of fire, Yi Chen turned into a flaming man. Whoosh! The flaming man flickered back and forth with great explosive power. Under the same realm, his speed was even faster than the water travel art. Rumble. A fireball condensed in his hand, and Yi Chen threw it out, causing a huge explosion. Damn, the law of fire is also complete. The Greenhoof Battle Saint's heart was not in a good mood. Jealousy gave him a strong desire to kill Yi Chen immediately. No, I can't kill him now. I have to wait for my martial will to break through to the late stage of the 9th order. It would be best if I can break through in other aspects as well. Shaking his head, the Greenhoof Battle Saint suppressed his desire to kill. Soon, my martial will break through at any time, and my foundation as a high-grade demigod has also stabilized. After comprehending the law of fire, Yi Chen began to absorb the law of fire fragments to strengthen his law of fire realm. After spending 400 years, the law of fire had reached its limit and could no longer be improved. Only a small portion of the law of fire remained. Naturally, Yi Chen shifted his attention to the law of earth fragment. Metal begets water, water begets wood, wood begets fire, fire begets earth, and earth begets metal. The 5 elements reinforced and restrained each other, forming a cycle. The gravity is so strong. The closer he got to the law of earth fragment, the heavier Yi Chen felt. Chapter 1450. The law of water filled the law of wood with vitality, the law of wood strengthened the law of fire, and the law of fire strengthened the law of earth. In the end, the firmament sword turned into an earthen mountain that smashed down on the Greenhoof War Saint. Boom. The void paused for a moment, then boundless ripples spread out and struck Yi Chen and the Greenhoof War Saint. Yi Chen's immortal sword physique was enough to block the attacks of a mid-rank demigod. Coupled with the mystic tortoise sacred armor, ordinary high-rank demigods couldn't do anything to him. The boundless ripples sent Yi Chen flying, but they didn't injure Yi Chen at all. Freeze! Yi Chen roared and a layer of earthen armor condensed on his body. This was the armor of earth. The moment the armor formed, Yi Chen felt as if he was rooted in the void. The boundless ripples pushed him away but couldn't move him in the slightest. On the other hand, the Greenhoof War Saint spat out a mouthful of blood and was sent flying. In terms of offense, the Greenhoof War Saint was stronger than Yi Chen. Even though Yi Chen had 4 great laws, he was much weaker than Yi Chen in terms of defense. Yi Chen could resist the boundless ripples, but the Greenhoof War Saint couldn't. Of course, this was only a small loss. Spitting out blood wasn't even an injury to a high-ranked demigod, it was merely a waste of energy. How can this be? The Greenhoof War Saint couldn't believe it. His offense was higher than Yi Chen's, but in terms of overall strength, Yi Chen was above him. Defense was also a part of one's strength. Greenhoof War Saint, take another slash from me. Withstanding the boundless ripples, Yi Chen slashed at the Greenhoof War Saint once more. The earthen mountain tore through the boundless ripples and heavily smashed into the Greenhoof War Saint. The Greenhoof War Saint was sent flying like a shooting star. With 4 great laws, Yi Qin no longer feared high-ranked demigods. Even against the best of them, Yi Qin was confident he could escape unscathed. The battle between the two of them lasted for 100 years. Neither was willing to back down. Although the Greenhoof War Saint was being suppressed as a high-ranked demigod, his origin energy was powerful and his martial soul was nearly indestructible. Yi Qin would have a hard time injuring him, let alone killing him. In comparison, Yi Qin's defense was even more monstrous. With the immortal sword body and the black tortoise sacred armor, Yi Qin was able to resist the attacks of the ancient Hoof War Saint. Coupled with the earth armor, the saint's attacks were no different from tickles to Yi Qin. Taking a step back, even if the first 3 couldn't stop the ancient Hoof War Saint, Yi Qin could still turn incorporeal and ignore the majority of the damage. The Law of Wood could also allow Yi Qin to instantly recover. After 100 years, Yi Qin had developed the wondrous uses of the power of laws to the limit. The Law of Water had water movement techniques and water world. The wood laws included the verdant wood body and the wood world. The Law of Fire had the fire traversing technique, the world of fire. The Law of Earth had the earth armor and the earth world. Although they didn't have many uses, they were actually all-encompassing. The world of law could even be used as a domain. Swordmaster Azure Lotus, we can't do anything to each other. Why don't we stop for now? The Greenhoof War Saint was extremely sullen. As a high-ranked demigod, he couldn't even defeat a heaven-defying sovereign. This was a great humiliation. He didn't want to fight with Yi Qin anymore. After absorbing the last of the god blood, he would immediately find an exit to leave the 15th floor. The primal chaos battlefield was so vast and had countless fortunes. Why should he fight to the death with Yi Qin? It wasn't worth it. Fine. Yi Qin decisively stopped. In the past 100 years he was only using the Greenhoof War Saint to practice. He didn't really want to fight to the death. Afterward, the two minded their own business. The Greenhoof War Saint absorbed the god blood while Yi Qin comprehended the last elemental law, the metal law. The law of metal fragment was a metal ball the size of a longan. It emitted a faint golden light. The golden light was not dazzling, but it gave off an extremely sharp feeling. It was as if being illuminated by the golden light would immediately blind one's eyes. The earth world spread and the earth armor covered his body. Yi Qin gradually approached the metal law fragment. Among the 5 elemental laws, the law of metal was the one with the strongest offensive power. It was extremely sharp. Although the law of fire was violent, it was still inferior to the law of metal. 200 years passed. Oh. Yi Qin frowned. Comprehending the metal law was much more difficult than he had imagined. It had to be said that he only spent 200 years to comprehend the wood law, 150 years to comprehend the fire law, and 100 years to comprehend the earth law. The elemental laws are only missing the metal law. It seems like this has nothing to do with the metal law. It's the primal chaos law's interference, not allowing me to easily comprehend the metal law and comprehend the 5 elemental laws. Yi Qin immediately thought of the crux of the matter. If 200 years wasn't enough, then 300 years. Yi Qin continued to comprehend. In the blink of an eye, 600 years passed. I finally finished absorbing the divine blood. Let's leave this place first. Glancing at Yi Qin and seeing that he was still comprehending the metal law, the Greenhoof War Saint heaved a sigh of relief. He was truly afraid that Yi Qin would comprehend the metal law. If that happened, he would be in danger. Even if he didn't die, he would still lose a layer of skin. After all, who knew what kind of monstrous progress one would make in comprehending the 5 elemental laws? The 15th underground floor had only entrances and exits. There was a passage when one entered, but it would disappear after entering. The Greenhoof War Saint flew toward the edge of the 15th floor, looking for an exit. 700 years. 1,000 years. 2,000 years. Time passed quickly. Soon, it had been 20,000 years since Yi Qin came to the 15th underground floor. On this day, Yi Qin's body emitted a dazzling golden light, as if he had turned into a golden man. In his soul sea, a grain-sized metal sphere was born. It emitted a sharp golden light and formed a ring with the other 4 great law fragments. Perhaps for an instant, perhaps for an eternity. A faint layer of 5-colored light flickered on Yi Qin's body. Every time it flickered, Yi Qin felt his body sublimate. Crackle. Miraculously, Yi Qin's spirit body advanced from peak rank 9 to perfection. Ever since then, his spirit body had reached its limit and could no longer be improved, unless he became a true god and condensed a divine body. His immortal sword body did not break through. It was still at the 18th level, but without a doubt he had reached the peak. The five-colored light not only changed Yi Chen's physique, but it also increased the speed of refining the divine blood by millions of times. However, the five-colored light was also consumed quickly. In the blink of an eye it was gone. Yi Chen took a deep breath and began to absorb the metal law fragment. Right now, the level of the metal law was still very weak. It was not on par with the other four great laws. When the level of the metal law increased, the five-colored light should be more. The only pity was that he did not have enough divine blood. He had just consumed a lot of it and he did not know if it could provide enough nutrition. Comprehending the metal law was difficult, but absorbing the metal law fragment was much easier. Every time he absorbed a strand of the metal law fragment, the five-colored light on Yi Chen's body would appear once. Yi Chen felt that he was getting closer and closer to becoming a primary demigod. It was as if there was only a thin veil between them, and when it was lifted, a new world would appear. Chapter 1451. The blood of a true god contained god power, which was the combination of heart power, energy, chi power, domain and will. As the five-colored light continued to appear, Yi Chen's green lotus sword realm naturally broke through to the late 9th level. A huge green lotus bloomed, with patterns like the veins of the galaxy, containing endless mysteries. The breakthrough of green lotus sword domain didn't attract the slightest bit of his attention. At this moment he felt like he was the mouth of a volcano. Inside the volcano, there was a world-destroying energy that could erupt at any time. He didn't know whether he would be burnt to ashes at the moment of eruption, or whether his body would be smashed into pieces. The frequency of the five-colored light became higher and higher. When the level of the metal law reached the limit that Yi Chen could endure, a five-colored light pillar shot into the sky, covering Yi Chen. Arg! Yi Chen could not help but scream. An eternal golden light shot out of his body. It was not as dazzling as the light law, but it gave people the illusion that it would never be extinguished. It was as if this was eternity. Time had lost its meaning and so had space. Like a god, Yi Chen's eyes had a hint of gold, and his skin was also pale gold. The martial path Yuan spirit in his body had evolved into a gold martial path Yuan spirit, without any impurities. He reached out and clenched his fist, causing the air to tremble in fear of his power. Is this the power of a demigod? Yi Chen closed his eyes and felt it carefully. The power of laws was the power of laws and cultivation was cultivation. The feeling they brought was different. The power of laws was the use of external power, while cultivation was the power of one's own body, which was more real. Before, without using the power of laws, Yi Chen could not fly. But now, with his own power, he was floating in the air. The moment he became a beginner demigod, his soul broke through again from the middle demigod level to the high demigod level. From now on, even without the support of god blood and god power crystals, he did not need to worry about using too much power of laws and getting hurt. Because with his beginner demigod cultivation and the soul sea of a high demigod, he could use the power of laws as he pleased. Correspondingly, his soul sea could withstand higher nomological realms. Starting from absorbing the fragments of the law of metal, Yi Chen spent a mere 50 years to absorb all the remaining fragments of the law of metal, leaving nothing behind. The law of water fragment took 45 years. The law of wood fragment took 60 years. The law of fire fragment took 52 years. The law of earth fragment took 54 years. There was a metal ball the size of a longan, a seed the size of a thumb, a water ball the size of a fist, a cluster of bright flames, and an irregular piece of yellow soil floating in his soul sea. The 5 great nomological fragments were arranged in a circle, and at the center of the circle traces of 5-colored light gathered. That was the nomological power of the 5 elements. Condense. A golden spear suddenly appeared in Yi Chen's hand. Law of metal, spear of metal. The golden spear dissipated, and Yi Chen pulled out the firmament sword, which was covered with a layer of gold. The golden spear was not necessarily in the shape of a spear. It could be in any shape, and it could also be attached to a weapon to increase its attack power. The world of metal was extremely sharp, and any object that entered the range of the world of metal would be pierced by the golden light. Even a powerful demigod might not have a higher nomological realm than me. Of course, some peak powerful demigods are not in this category, but powerful demigods have already refined godly power. In terms of overall strength, I'm definitely not a match for them. Godly power combined with nomological power is the foundation of a powerful demigod. Yi Chen was now very confident, but he also knew his limits. In front of a powerful demigod, he was still an ant. This was an indisputable fact. But in front of him weren't high-level demigods also ants? I'll come back later to see if I can comprehend other laws. Right now, I'll go see where the Greenhoof War Saint went. The world of metal dissipated, and Yi Qin instantly turned into a man of fire. Whoosh! With a flash of fire, Yi Qin disappeared without a trace. His speed was more than 1,000 times faster than before. Among the 5 elements, the fire traversing art was the fastest and had the most explosive power, while the water traversing art was the fastest in water. Damn it, where's the exit? The Greenhoof War Saint had been searching for the exit for nearly 10,000 years. In his view, the entire 15th floor was like a lost world, completely isolated from the outside world. Following the edge of the wall, the Greenhoof War Saint numbly searched. After several hundred years, the Greenhoof War Saint finally saw a glimmer of light. Joy appeared in his eyes. Could it be the exit? No, that's a flame. The Greenhoof War Saint's expression changed. A moment later, a man of fire appeared in front of him. Who else could it be but Yi Qin? Sword Venerable Azure Lotus, what are you doing? The Greenhoof War Saint was a bit apprehensive. After nearly 10,000 years, Yi Qin might have comprehended the law of metal. Once the latter did so, the Greenhoof War Saint would be even less of a match. Although the Greenhoof War Saint was confident in protecting himself, the initiative was not on his side. Who knew if the other party would spend a long time exhausting him? Greenhoof War Saint, long time no see. Your luck is really bad, you still haven't found the exit. Yi Qin playfully looked at the Greenhoof War Saint as the flame on his body gradually extinguished. The Greenhoof War Saint was about to speak when he suddenly pointed at Yi Qin in shock. You've become an elementary demigod. How is this possible? Earlier, Yi Qin had turned into a man of fire and was shrouded in the law of fire, so the Greenhoof War Saint didn't notice that Yi Qin was already an elementary demigod. Now that the law of fire had dissipated, the Greenhoof War Saint finally noticed Yi Qin's cultivation. If Yi Qin had only comprehended the law of metal, the Greenhoof War Saint wouldn't be so afraid. Even if the latter was stronger than him, it wouldn't be to such an abnormal degree. As a high-ranked demigod, his martial soul was almost indestructible. Unless the difference in power was too great, it would be very difficult to kill him. The only way was to exhaust him over a long period of time. However, Yi Qin had actually become an elementary demigod. With his cultivation combined with the power of laws, he was in existence close to a powerful demigod. Before this, Yi Qin was already stronger than him, but now, Swordmaster Azure Lotus, let's talk this out. There is no irreconcilable conflict between us. The Greenhoof War Saint cautiously looked at Yi Qin, ready to flee at any moment. Yi Qin shook his head. Greenhoof War Saint, I won't waste words with you. I want the god blood in your body. It's that simple, so please die. With that, Yi Qin activated the law of fire. A moment later, a terrifying world of fire spread out and enveloped the Greenhoof War Saint, turning the entire void into a furnace that burned everything. Ark! The Greenhoof War Saint screamed and became a man of fire. Then he turned into ashes, and even his golden martial soul was no exception. Yi Qin's mastery of the law of 5 elements was very high. After absorbing all the fragments, Yi Qin could instantly kill an ordinary high-ranked demigod by relying on the world of fire. Too easy. Yi Qin did not expect it to be this easy, which was a bit unexpected. Chapter 1452. Inside the world of fire, 2 objects floated in the air. One was the unrefined god blood, and the other was the storage ring. Yi Qin couldn't destroy the unrefined god blood, as it was protected by the god power. The storage ring of the ancient hoof battle saint was purposely left behind by Yi Qin. Ignoring the god blood for now, Yi Qin sucked the storage ring into his hand. Not bad. Opening the storage ring, Yi Qin revealed a faint smile. Those who came to the miracle were all experts, and those who came to the 15th floor were the experts among the experts. They had more and more symbols than ordinary people. As the only living person in the 15th floor, Yi Qin naturally obtained all the symbols. Right now, Yi Qin had collected 3 sets of golden chaos symbols, but he was still lacking 7, 8, and 9 numbers for the blue chaos symbols. These 3 blue chaos symbols should be very hard to collect. Otherwise, it would be impossible for him to not have even one. Apart from the 3 sets of golden symbols, there were still thousands of duplicates of golden symbols and hundreds of duplicates of blue symbols. As long as his luck wasn't bad, he should be able to collect more. However, for Yi Qin, as long as he could collect 3 sets of golden symbols and 1 set of blue symbols, it would be a waste. Of course, he could give them to others. Putting away the storage ring, Yi Chen looked at the god blood. There wasn't much left, only 10% of the original amount. The rest had all been refined by the ancient hoof battle saint. However, Yi Chen was very satisfied. He had absorbed less than 1% of the original amount after so many years. He tried to absorb the god blood with all his might. Yi Chen discovered that his absorption speed was thousands of times faster than before. Even the ancient hoof battle saint couldn't compare to him. Comprehending the 5 elements brought him a huge advantage. In less than a year, Yi Chen had absorbed 10% of the god blood into his body. This bit of god blood should be enough for me to break through to mid-level demigod. But I have to leave some for Su Jing and Murong. Whoosh! Flames flickered as Yi Chen dashed in the direction of the fragment, moving as fast as lightning. First, he set his sights on the Law of Wind fragment. The firmament sword contained the Law of Wind. If he could comprehend the Law of Wind, he would be able to unleash the power of the firmament sword to a higher level. No. Yi Chen shook his head. Even after dozens of years, he still had no clue. The 5 elemental laws seemed to be rejecting him from comprehending other laws. No. It won't work either. It still won't work. He tried them one by one, but they all failed. Fortunately, the firmament sword had absorbed some fragments of the Law of Wind, so it was not without gains. Looks like the law fragments here are not fated with me. There was a city in the 9 domains called Celestial Wolf City, which was built by the Celestial Wolf Battle Sage. There were many cities like this in other domains. In the years that Yi Chen had been in the Divine Ruin, the Primal Chaos continent had changed a lot. Gangs and all kinds of forces had sprung up like bamboo shoots after a rain. Celestial Wolf City was the #1 force in the 9 domains. Living in Celestial Wolf City required paying 10 million yuan stones every year. In addition, one had to work for Celestial Wolf City. Near Celestial Wolf City, there was a rich mine that produced chaos stones. Chaos stones were a type of cultivation stone that was of a higher grade than yuan stones, and were used for demigods to cultivate. Demigods would need a much longer time to break through if they relied on yuan stones alone. Generally, yuan stones were used to replenish consumption or to set up formations. For example, Celestial Wolf City was filled with all kinds of formations and restrictions. Big sister, why don't we leave Celestial Wolf City and go to other domains? Within an ordinary-looking palace in Celestial Wolf City, there were hundreds of female paragons and 10 or so female demigods gathered. The female demigod in the lead was a peerlessly beautiful woman with very long legs. She wore a long black dress, and just by sitting there she was extremely graceful, making it impossible for others to look away even if they wanted to. 100 Blossom Hall was a small force attached to Celestial Wolf City. It was made up entirely of women, and the hall master was the Black Flower Battle Sage. She was definitely the #1 beauty in Celestial Wolf City. This kind of beauty was not just in appearance but also in spirit. You guys are too naive. Celestial Wolf City is the #1 force in the 9 domains, and the Celestial Wolf Battle Sage is the #1 expert in the 9 domains. Even if we escape to other domains, he will not let us go. He might even implicate you guys. Moreover, whether or not we can leave Celestial Wolf City is another matter altogether. Black Flower Battle Sage shook her head helplessly. She had already prepared to sacrifice herself to the Celestial Wolf Battle Sage. Resistance would not help and would only bring disaster to 100 Blossom Hall. As she spoke, Black Flower Battle Sage glanced at the sisters present. These were all sisters she had met in the Primal Chaos battlefield. There were demigods, heaven-defying paragons, quasi-demigods, and ordinary paragons. Among the large number of paragons was Su Jing. Chapter 1453. Su Jing looked at the Black Flower Battle Saint with a complicated expression. Her elder sister had always treated them well. Without her, Su Jing didn't think she could have lived peacefully until now. Of course, her elder sister also had a domineering side. She made them hand over all their storage rings and saint weapons. Naturally, Su Jing's Sky Saint armor and weapons were all handed over to her. Su Jing didn't hold a grudge. She couldn't keep the Sky Saint weapon with her. Once it was leaked, it would be taken away sooner or later and she might even be killed. Therefore, when the Black Flower Battle Sage was in trouble, Su Jingting wanted to help him. Unfortunately, with her own strength, she could not help him at all. Ordinary Supreme Beings were the lowest group in the Primal Chaos battlefield. They could not even protect themselves. If Yi Chen were here, he should be able to help. Unconsciously, Su Jing thought of Yi Chen. In her heart, Yi Chen was omnipotent. When Yi Chen had just arrived at the Chaos battlefield, he might only be able to contend against a primary demigod. However, after 20,000 years, Yi Qin must have made great progress. Su Jing firmly believed that. Haha, Black Flower Battle Saint, have you thought it through? I, the Heavenly Wolf Battle Saint, don't like to force people, but I won't give you too much time to think. Outside the palace, a large amount of black smoke condensed, forming a tall figure. The figure had a third eye on his forehead, flickering with a frightening cold light. The Heavenly Wolf Battle Saint, the #1 expert of the 9 regions, was a peak mid-level demigod. Soon, the Black Flower Battle Saint walked out of the palace with a group of sisters. The Black Flower Battle Saint floated up, her long black dress like a black curtain, accentuating her snow-white skin. Heavenly Wolf Battle Saint, I am willing to be your woman. The Black Flower Battle Saint nodded. Good, Black Flower Battle Saint, you are very wise. I'm very happy. The Heavenly Wolf Battle Saint revealed a smile, and his frightening aura gradually eased. Looking at the Heavenly Wolf Battle Saint, the Black Flower Battle Saint continued, but I have a request. Speak. The 100 Flowers Hall is my faction. You can restrict my freedom, but you cannot restrict their freedom. Glancing at the people of 100 Blossom Hall, the Heavenly Wolf Battle Saint flatly refused. No, since you are my woman, then 100 Blossom Hall belongs to my Heavenly Wolf City. They must listen to my orders. How can they act freely? The Heavenly Wolf Battle Saint had always been domineering. He only needed people to obey him, not conditions. As the two of them were negotiating, in the distance of Celestial Wolf City, a streak of fiery light was rapidly approaching. In the blink of an eye, it was still 1,000 miles away, but in the blink of an eye, it was already right in front of them. It was the blue robe Yi Qin. This is Tianlang City? Yi Qin sized up the huge city in front of him. This huge city was extremely majestic and domineering. Above the city gates there were 3 large words Heavenly Wolf City. It clearly contained a domineering martial will that could be seen and felt from far away. Activating the law of water, the water vapor in the air instantly became Yi Qin's eyes. He could clearly see the inside of Tianlang City. The countless arrays and restrictions were useless before the law of water. Soon a smile appeared on Yi Qin's face. He had discovered Su Jing. Whoosh! Transforming into a streak of fiery light, Yi Qin instantly passed through the arrays and restrictions of Tianlang City and arrived in the sky above the 100 Flowers Hall. Su Jing. The flames were extinguished and Yi Qin slowly spoke. It was Yi Qin's voice. Su Jing hurriedly raised her head and saw the blue-robed Yi Qin. Tears immediately blurred her eyes, and the longing in her heart reached its peak at this moment. She could no longer control herself. In the next moment, the two of them hugged each other tightly, completely ignoring the existence of everyone else. Who is this? He should be little sister Su Jing's man. He looks quite powerful. How can a heaven-defying supremacy who has comprehended the law of fire not be powerful? But he's too reckless. This is Tianlang City. Isn't he afraid of offending the Heavenly Wolf Battle Saint by acting like this in front of him? I hope nothing happens to him. The sisters of the 100 Flowers Hall discussed animatedly. Even the Heavenly Wolf Battle Saint and the Black Flower Battle Saint looked over. Letting go of Su Jing's body, Yi Qin stared into her eyes and said warmly, "You've worked hard all these years. In the future, I will never let you suffer again." Yi Qin noticed that Su Jing was not wearing a Heavenly Saint artifact armor. It was not difficult to imagine that many things must have happened in the past. It was already a blessing in disguise that the two of them could meet again. For a moment, Yi Qin was a little annoyed with himself. He should not have comprehended the law of metal and wasted nearly 10,000 years. However, Yi Qin did not seriously consider it. If he had not comprehended the law of metal, he would not have become an elementary demigod and would not have found the exit so quickly. It should be known that the ancient Hoof Battle Saint had also searched for the exit for nearly 10,000 years. If Yi Qin had not become an elementary demigod, he might not have found the exit even now, wasting even more time. Covering Yi Qin's mouth, Su Jing said, "It's already heaven's blessing that we can meet. At least I waited until you came. By the way, have you found little sister Qingqing?" Su Jing suddenly asked. Yi Qin's face darkened. Shaking his head, he said, "Not yet. I will accompany you to look for her. Don't worry too much. I think little sister Qingqing should be waiting for you just like me." "En?" Yi Qin nodded. A cold light flickered in the Heavenly Wolf Battle Saint's eyes. These two were too presumptuous. They did not even take him seriously. Moreover, this heaven-defying sovereign dared to fly above Heavenly Wolf City. He deserved to die 1,000 times over. With a cold snort, the Heavenly Wolf Battle Saint's right hand suddenly grabbed at Yi Chen and Su Jing, turning into a giant hand of black smoke along the way. In his eyes, the so-called heaven-defying sovereigns were just ants. Only the 5 sovereigns could fight him. Scram. Yi Chen tilted his head and smashed the giant hand of black smoke with a fire fist. Finally, it landed heavily on the Heavenly Wolf Battle Saint's chest. With a sweep of flames, the Heavenly Wolf Battle Saint's chest was almost penetrated. His body was charred black and smoking. His appearance was so miserable that everyone was dumbfounded. What? He is an elementary demigod who has comprehended the law. He is not a heaven-defying sovereign. Terrifying. The Heavenly Wolf Battle Saint was seriously injured with one punch. The sky of the 9 regions is going to change. I didn't expect little sister Su Jing's man to be so powerful. He can be said to be invincible. The sisters of the 100 Blossom Hall were both shocked and envious. The one whose expression changed the most was the Hall Master of the 100 Blossom Hall, the Black Flower Battle Saint. Little sister Su Jing usually kept a low profile, but no one expected her to have such a powerful background. Oh no, little sister Su Jing's Heavenly Saint artifact was still in her possession. Although she had willingly given it to her, her man might not think the same way. Even a fool would know that little sister Su Jing's Heavenly Saint artifact was given to her by her man. How could an ordinary person possess a Heavenly Saint artifact? The Black Flower Battle Saint panicked. My lord, I have offended you just now. I deserve to die. Please spare my life. The Heavenly Wolf Battle Saint was severely injured. More than half of his gold martial primordial spirit had been destroyed. However, at this moment he had no other thoughts. All he wanted was to survive. Su Jing, how do you think we should deal with him? Yi Chen looked at Su Jing. If Su Jing wanted him to kill, he would kill. If Su Jing wanted him to release, he would release. Chapter 1454. Su Jing looked at Celestial Wolf Battle Saint. Celestial Wolf Battle Saint also looked at Su Jing and begged for mercy. If you are willing to let me go, I am willing to hand over all my savings. Celestial Wolf City is also yours. Kill him. Su Jing said coldly. She would never forget how Celestial Wolf Battle Saint killed 3 sisters of 100 Flower Hall. One of the sisters had been with her for more than 20,000 years, and they were as close as sisters. Bitch, I will make you wish you were dead. Boom. His body exploded into black smoke. When he reappeared, Celestial Wolf Battle Saint was already very far away. He was a life form of the Dark Fog universe and could naturally transform into Dark Fog. You think you can escape? Yi Chen casually threw another fiery fist at Celestial Wolf Battle Saint. This time, the might of the fiery fist was more than 10,000 times greater, and it was billions of times more dazzling than a comet. In an instant, it streaked across the sky and landed on the Heavenly Wolf Battle Saint. In the next moment, the Heavenly Wolf Battle Saint's entire body exploded and turned into ashes. The dazzling light illuminated the entire Heavenly Wolf City. Celestial Wolf Battle Saint is dead? Who killed him? He's so strong. Not even the 5 Supremes could kill Celestial Wolf Battle Saint. Unless it was Supremacy Yin, one of the original 5 Supremes and the current Yin Yang Battle Saint. Almost everyone in Celestial Wolf City saw the scene just now and was shocked. Invincible, peerless. Black Flower Battle Saint's heart was touched. Yi Chen gave her many feelings. He was mysterious, powerful, gentle, considerate, and at the same time, indescribably domineering. Compared to Celestial Wolf Battle Saint, Yi Chen was undoubtedly more attractive. Celestial Wolf Battle Saint used his heart to conquer women, while Celestial Wolf Battle Saint used his strength to conquer women. Sister Love Flower, rest in peace. Revenge has been taken. Su Jing thought to herself. Su Jing, who are they? Yi Chen looked at Black Flower Battle Saint and the others. Su Jing introduced, Big Sister is the Hall Master of 100 Flower Hall, Black Flower Battle Saint. She treats us very well. The rest are sisters of 100 Flower Hall. Black Flower Battle Sage, thank you for taking care of Su Jing for so long. Let me give you a little gift. I hope you won't mind. Yi Chen waved his right hand, and hundreds of dazzling specks of light entered the Black Flower Battle Saint's body. These specks of light were the crystallization of divinity. Yi Chen was able to conceal the radiance of the crystallization of divinity with the help of the laws of 5 elements and his cultivation as an elementary demigod, making it less conspicuous. Yi Chen also concealed the radiance of the crystallization of divinity. Yi Chen did not wish for the Black Flower Battle Saint to be killed or be targeted by others because of the crystallization of divinity. Just as the Black Flower Battle Saint was about to refuse, a look of surprise flashed across her eyes. It was a divine power crystal. A single divine power crystal could save a demigod 10,000 years of cultivation. 100 divine power crystals could save at least 1,000,000 years of cultivation. Thank you. The Black Flower Battle Saint revealed a grateful expression, then looked at Su Jing. With a wave of her hand, 3 objects flew towards Su Jing. They were the Sky Saint armor, a Sky Saint weapon, and a storage ring. Sister, these are your things. I'll return them to you. Sister, you won't blame me for taking your things, right? The Black Flower Battle Saint was a bit ashamed. Taking the Sky Saint weapon and the storage ring, Su Jing said in a gentle voice, "How could I? Without you, it would still be a problem for me to live. I believe the Sisters of 100 Flower Hall all think the same. Without the Black Flower Battle Saint, there would be no 100 Flower Hall. Without the 100 Flower Hall, everyone would have no home, no power to protect them. Compared to their lives, what were external objects worth?" The next day Yi Chen and Su Jing left the Sky Wolf City. The Sky Wolf Battle Saint has quite a lot of treasures. Regarding the Sky Wolf Battle Saint's savings, Yi Chen naturally wouldn't be lenient. He took everything he wanted, leaving nothing behind. Even the majority of the Chaos Gem mines near the Sky Wolf City were dug out by Yi Chen and stored in the 5-element space. After comprehending the 5 elements, Yi Chen could open up a 5-element space in the Chaos battlefield. This 5-element space was extremely stable and wouldn't be shattered by the primal chaos principle. The 5-element space was inside Yi Chen's body, which was equivalent to a mobile storage ring. However, the space inside was much higher than that of a storage ring. It was completely suitable for living beings to live inside, no different from the real world. In the 5-element space, a chain of mines stretched as far as the eye could see. In the depths of the mines, there was a paradise, filled with birdsong, fragrant flowers, waterfalls, and countless beautiful sceneries. Su Jing sat cross-legged on a piece of flat land, diligently cultivating. With a large amount of divine power crystals, Su Jing could make great progress at every moment. After all, even if her cultivation base was low, her progress was fast. Leaving the 9 regions, Yi Chen arrived at the 8 regions. Yi Chen discovered that the higher the ranking, the more powerful experts there were, and the more treasures there were. There were all kinds of different forces, enough to make one dizzy. In order to search for Murong Qingqing, Yi Chen controlled a large number of forces and had them help him search. He understood that there was strength in numbers. For a moment Yi Chen's name resounded. Everyone in the top-ranked regions knew of the Green Lotus Sword Saint, who possessed peerless martial strength. Even the 5 great supremes were not his opponent. Lord Sword Saint, the 7 regions don't have the person you speak of. Lord Sword Saint, the 14 regions don't have the person you speak of. Lord Sword Saint. Although Yi Chen had searched in other regions before at that time, his strength wasn't very strong and there were more or less mistakes. This time, Yi Chen ordered all the forces to turn the entire primal chaos continent upside down. Not a single place was left unchecked. One region. This was the only place that Yi Chen's forces did not dare to set foot in. This was because there was also a peerless expert here, the Yin-Yang Battle Saint. The Yin-Yang Battle Saint was originally one of the 5 great supremes. He was called Supremacy Yin, and his strength was comparable to Supremacy Light. However, by chance not only did Supremacy Yin become a primary demigod, but he also comprehended another type of nomological law, the Yang nomological law. His strength was earth-shattering and no one was his opponent. Yin-Yang City was the Yin-Yang Battle Saint's force, and it was the only force in this region. Yin-Yang City's main palace. In the spacious and deep palace, the Yin-Yang Battle Saint opened his eyes. Is he finally here? Even from far away he could feel Yi Chen's aura. This aura was something that only he could feel because they were experts of the same level. I'm so excited. I finally have an opponent. The Yin-Yang Battle Saint's figure flashed and turned into a white stream of air. His speed was not any slower than Yi Chen's. From afar the two of them saw each other. Yin-Yang Battle Saint. Green Lotus Sword Saint. The two of them introduced each other. I'm looking for someone. I hope you can cooperate. Yi Chen said. I'm happy to cooperate, but the premise is that you can survive my attack. If you die, there's no need for me to cooperate. The Yin-Yang Battle Saint smiled and his battle intent soared. Yi Chen frowned slightly but he quickly relaxed. Okay, as you wish. Days without an opponent were very boring. Yi-Chen also wanted to know how strong the Yin-Yang Battle Saint, who had comprehended 2 top nomological laws, was and how he compared to his own 5 elemental laws. Straightforward. As expected of an expert who has reached this level. The Yin-Yang Battle Saint nodded in satisfaction. Chapter 1455. Let's end this quickly. Yi-Chen pulled out the firmament sword, which was covered with a faint 5-colored airflow. The 5 elements reinforced and restrained each other. Metal gave birth to water, water gave birth to wood, wood gave birth to fire, fire gave birth to earth, and earth gave birth to metal. When the 5 elements gathered, the power circulated endlessly and complemented each other. Its power was many times stronger than a single basic law. It could be said that when Yi-Chen went all out, no advanced demigod would be a match for Yi-Chen as long as he did not comprehend a law. Yi-Chen did not go all out to kill the Greenhoof Battle Saint. He only used the law of fire. Of course, the Greenhoof Battle Saint was at the bottom of the advanced demigods. After all, he had just become an advanced demigod. The law of the 5 elements, not bad. The Yin-Yang Battle Saint laughed and a hammer appeared in his hand. Black and white airflow circled around the hammer, combining strength and softness. Let's fight. Yi-Chen carried his sword and rushed toward the Yin-Yang Battle Saint. Good timing. The Yin-Yang Battle Saint met him head-on. Clang. The firmament sword and the hammer collided, producing an earth-shattering sound. The sky above the domain first changed from black and white, then the 5-colored airflow filled the air. The next moment, chaotic light exploded, as if the world was born. Yi-Chen and the Yin-Yang Battle Saint were both sent flying. The ground below them continued to sink, extending endlessly. So terrifying. What level of battle is this? It has such powerful destructive power. The experts living in the domain were stunned. The material of the chaotic battlefield was very hard. They could not destroy it on a large scale even if they tried their best. However, the battle between the two had spread thousands of miles. This was a scene of destruction. Awesome Yin-Yang world. The Yin-Yang Battle Saint's body shook. Black and white airflow spread out, shrouding Yi-Chen. 5 elements world. A 5-colored airflow burst out from Yi-Chen's body. Boom, 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 boom. The Yin-Yang world and the 5 elements world continued to collide, neither giving way. Every time the 2 worlds collided, a large expanse of chaotic light sputtered. Wherever the 2 worlds hit, that place would disappear completely. Concealment. Suddenly, Yin-Yang Battle Saint disappeared. When he reappeared, he was behind Yi-Chen. As if struck by lightning, Yi-Chen's entire body was sent flying. Fortunately, he had the 5-element world and the Xianwu sacred armor to protect him, so the Yin-Yang Battle Saint's hammer didn't kill him. He was only lightly injured. Whoosh. Transforming into a man of fire, Yi-Chen counterattacked the Yin-Yang Battle Saint. However, the Yin-Yang Battle Saint, who had transformed into a white stream of air, was no slower than Yi-Chen and was even more agile. You are no match for me. I'm sorry, there is no one you are looking for and there is no news about her. The Yin-Yang Battle Saint shook his head. There is no one? In fact, during this period of time, Yi-Chen had also been searching in the first domain. Through the water world he could explore a large area at once. Unfortunately, Murong Qingqing was indeed not in the first domain, and there was no news about her. Could she be in the chaotic sea? Yi-Chen's expression was a bit ugly. The chaotic sea was boundless, and it was many times larger than the chaotic continent. Searching for her by himself was undoubtedly like looking for a needle in a haystack. Is this person very important to you? The Yin-Yang Battle Saint asked. Yi-Chen nodded. Very important. You can go to the chaotic forest or the chaotic mountain range to search, the Yin-Yang Battle Saint suggested. The chaotic continent was very large, and the 99 domains were only a relatively safe area. The chaotic forest and the chaotic mountain range were much more dangerous. Chaotic creatures roamed freely inside, and there were even level 7 and level 8 creatures. It was not impossible for level 9 creatures to appear. Alright, then I will take my leave. Yi-Chen planned to wait a little longer. If there was no news of Murong Qingqing in the 99 domains, he was prepared to enter the chaotic forest and chaotic mountain range to search for Murong Qingqing. He believed that with his strength, there should not be too much danger. Be careful. I have been to the chaotic forest a few times, and it gives me a very dangerous feeling. You should know what a place that can make me feel dangerous means. The Yin-Yang Battle Saint reminded Yi-Chen. Understood, thank you for the reminder. A place that could make the Yinyang Battle Saint feel dangerous was definitely not an ordinary place. There must be level 8 creatures, or even a level 8 king of chaotic creatures. If he encountered a level 9 creature, he could only resign himself to fate. A level 9 creature was an existence comparable to a powerful demigod. It was not something that the current Yi Chen could contend with. Chapter 1456. It was one thing for his subordinates to search for him and another thing for himself. After spending 10 years, Yi Chen had searched all 99 domains of the chaotic continent. Unfortunately, there was no sign of Murong Qingqing. There were only two explanations for this situation. First, Murong Qingqing was already dead. Second, Murong Qingqing wasn't in the 99 domains. Yi Chen hoped it was the latter. Since he had searched all 99 domains, Yi Chen could only place his target on the chaotic forest and chaotic mountain range. First was the chaotic forest. The chaotic forest was located on the west side of the chaotic continent. Its area was larger than all 99 domains combined. The chaotic forest was shrouded in fog all day. Unless one reached the level of Yi Chen or the Yinyang Battle Saint, not many dared to enter. In the 5-element space, Su Jing was still cultivating. Yi Chen didn't hesitate and entered the chaotic forest. So quiet. Once he entered the chaotic forest, Yi Chen felt like he had entered another world. His soul force swept out and everything was covered in fog. A world of water filled the air and the reflected images were distorted. The chaotic forest had its own set of laws that could distort Yi Chen's law of water. Traveling through the forest, Yi Chen felt a bit depressed. The chaotic forest was a world of its own. The trees were so tall that they reached the clouds. Each tree was several miles or even dozens of miles thick. An extremely dense vitality was emitted, forming a fog. CSI. Just as Yi Chen passed by a large tree, a large head bit over. A fishy smell assaulted his nose, making Yi Chen feel slightly disgusted. The 5-element space spread out and blocked the bite. Yi Chen couldn't help but look at the large tree. A green python that was several hundred meters thick coiled around the tree. At first glance, one would think it was a giant vine. 8th level chaos creature, chaos poison python. 8th level chaos creatures were equivalent to high-level demigods. However, any 8th level chaos creature was stronger than normal high-level demigods because they were born with the power of laws. For example, the chaos poison python was born with the law of poison. Although the level of the law of poison wasn't high, it was very threatening. As long as one wasn't a powerful demigod, one bite would definitely kill them. As expected of the chaos forest, Yi Chen did not dare to be careless. He had never fought with a level 8 chaos creature before, so he did not know how strong the other party was. Once it missed its target, the chaos poisonous python opened its mouth and spat out a purple whirlwind. This purple whirlwind was extremely smelly, as if it was made up of all the stinkiest things in the world. Just one whiff of it would make one feel as if they would fall into hell and never be able to reincarnate. Instead of dodging the purple whirlwind, Yi Chen activated the 5 elemental laws. The 5 elemental world expanded ferociously. Not only did it disperse the purple whirlwind, it even struck the chaos poison python's body. The primal chaos venomous python was sent flying away along with the tree that was wrapped around it. Not bad, but not my match. Yi Chen reckoned that level 8 chaos creatures should be equivalent to relatively powerful high-level demigods. Some of the stronger ones were equivalent to top-notch high-level demigods. A level 8 king of chaos creatures was equivalent to a peak high-level demigod. Although the chaotic forest was large, Yi Chen's scouting speed was fast. After 200 years, Yi Chen had already explored most of the chaotic forest and fought with countless chaotic life forms. There were level 6 chaos creatures, level 7 chaos creatures and level 8 chaos creatures. There was even a level 8 king of chaos creatures. A level 8 king of chaos creatures was only slightly weaker than Yi Chen. The power of laws it contained was very dense and it was hard to kill. After 300 years, Yi Chen had searched the entire chaotic forest once, but he still couldn't find any trace of Murong Qingqing. Thinking about it, in such a harsh situation, even supremes couldn't survive and even demigods couldn't survive. What Yi Chen didn't know was that there was a place deep in the chaotic forest that he hadn't explored yet. The fog there was 100 times thicker than other places. The strangest thing was that the fog could reflect light. If one didn't enter it, they wouldn't be able to notice this place and it was very easy to overlook. In the thick fog, there was a black monster the size of a mountain lying there sleeping. The air it exhaled was the fog. Chaotic mountain range. Although he knew that it was unlikely for Murong Qingqing to be in the chaotic forest or chaotic mountain range, Yichen still wanted to look for her. Compared to the chaotic forest, the chaotic mountain range was much hotter. There was plenty of light and there were fewer chaotic creatures here. After 150 years, Yichen arrived at the depths of the chaotic mountain range. So hot. Yichen discovered that the closer he got to the depths of the chaotic mountain range, the hotter the temperature became. This kind of temperature was no longer a normal temperature, it was a temperature that could annihilate a demigod. Gradually, the scarlet-red ground was replaced by a magma lake. This was an incomparably huge magma lake. It was blood-red in color and endless flames were spewing out from the magma lake, forming boundless waves of fire. The 5 elements world unfolded and Yichen passed through the waves of fire. It's impossible for anyone to be here. It seems like Murong Qingqing isn't in the primal chaos continent. While heaving a sigh of relief, Yichen began to worry. If Murong Qingqing wasn't in the primal chaos continent, where could she be? He continued to search carefully. Yichen didn't want to let go of any possibility. Unknowingly, Yichen arrived at the center of the magma lake. The temperature here was already close to the limit of a mid-level demigod. Only high-level demigods could fly here and not get hurt. He didn't know if it was Yichen's illusion, but Yichen vaguely sensed that a terrifying crisis was approaching. Rumble. Just as Yichen raised his guard, a monstrous wave of fire soared into the sky. Accompanying the wave of fire was a blood-red dragon. This dragon was too big, estimated to be thousands of miles long. In the primal chaos battlefield, an honorable could only maintain the figure of an ordinary person and couldn't change too much. Even a demigod could only change a little. Therefore, the bigger the body, the stronger the strength of the chaos creature. A chaos creature that was thousands of miles long was definitely not as simple as a level 8 chaos creature. It was also unlikely that it was the king of level 8 chaos creatures. After taking a closer look, Yichen couldn't help but be shocked. Level 9 chaos creature, Chaos Fire Dragon. A level 9 chaos creature was comparable to a powerful demigod. This was definitely not something that Yichen could contend with. Run. Without any other thoughts, Yichen used the fire travel technique and fled frantically. The Chaos Fire Dragon roared into the sky, and the terrifying sound wave quickly caught up with Yichen. Yichen felt as if his soul was about to float away, and his entire body fell uncontrollably into the magma lake. Too strong. Is this the power of a level 9 chaos creature? Yichen was shocked. He didn't stop using the fire travel technique and shuttled through the magma lake. As the magma lake was formed by the convergence of flames, the speed of using the fire travel technique was even faster. However, the Chaos Fire Dragon was even faster. In a short while it caught up with Yichen and clawed at him. Bang! The magma lake shook, and Yichen, who had turned into a flaming man, exploded. Fortunately, he quickly condensed his body and continued to flee. I can't stop. Yichen felt the crisis of death. He had used the power of the 5 elemental laws just now. If it was just the fire travel technique, he would have been killed. Chapter 1457. 5 Elemental Fire Escape. With no other choice, Yichen used the 5 elemental laws again. His body emitted a hazy rainbow light, and his speed increased by 10 times. In a flash he was 10,000 miles away. The Chaos Fire Dragon did not give up. It turned into a fire dragon and chased after him. Its fire traveling technique was no lower than Yichen's, but it was not as good as the 5 elemental fire escape. After 10 minutes, Yichen completely lost the Chaos Fire Dragon and came to the edge of the chaotic mountain range. That was close. Letting out a heavy breath, Yichen still had some lingering fear in his heart. Level 9 creatures were too strong. There was no way to fight back. Only the merged laws could be relied on. The 5 elemental laws have been used up. It's not good to take risks now. Looking at his sea of soul, there was only a faint trace of the rainbow light between the 5 elemental laws. After all, the power of 5 elemental laws was not fused by Yichen. It was formed naturally and its quantity was limited. If Yichen had fused the 5 elemental laws on his own initiative, then the power of 5 elemental laws would be practically limitless, just like how he could use fire and water elemental laws. Green Lotus Sword Saint, I plan to go to the Scarlet Continent. Are you interested? On this day the Yin-Yang Battle Saint suddenly came to visit. Scarlet Continent? Yichen had never heard of it before. The Yin-Yang Battle Saint smiled. It seems that you haven't heard of the Scarlet Continent. That's right, most people haven't. Let me explain. Those who come to the chaotic battlefield all want to enter the legendary heaven realm and continue cultivating. Those who are not strong enough can only rely on luck. For example, gathering all the gold chaos symbols, and blue chaos symbols. But for the two of us, our strength is enough. In fact, as long as we have the strength of a high-level demigod, we are qualified to enter the heaven realm. We don't need the gold chaos symbols or the blue chaos symbols. Oh, I see. This was the first time Yi Qin had heard of it. The Yin-Yang battle sage continued, in order to enter the heaven realm, we must reach the Crimson Continent. The Primal Chaos Talisman is actually a one-time use space-time teleportation talisman. However, it is passive and will only activate after 100,000 years. With the strength of the two of us, we can definitely pass through the Sea of Chaos and reach the Crimson Continent by ourselves. What kind of place is the Scarlet Continent? Yi Qin asked. The Crimson Continent is the place closest to the heaven realm. As it is close to the heaven realm, it is extremely fertile. There are countless treasures and opportunities. Some lucky people might appear on the Crimson Continent when they first arrive at the Primal Chaos battlefield. The person you are looking for might also be on the Crimson Continent. The Yin-Yang battle saint explained. How far is the Crimson Continent from the Chaos mainland? Yi Qin was tempted. The Chaos Ocean was boundless. If he was unlucky, he might not be able to find anyone in the Chaos Ocean even after 10 million years. He might as well go to the Crimson Continent to search. If he was not on the Crimson Continent, he could just leave the Crimson Continent and continue searching. If he could find him, everyone would be happy and he could stay on the Crimson Continent. I don't know about this. I only know that the Scarlet Continent is in the east of the Primal Chaos Continent. Yin-Yang battle saint shook his head. Alright, let's set off as soon as possible. Yi Qin did not want to waste a single moment. No problem, we can set off tomorrow. The Yin-Yang battle saint smiled. The Chaos Ocean was full of dangers. Although he had the strength to look down on high-level demigods, he could not guarantee that he could reach the Crimson Continent safely. However, with the addition of Yi Qin, the danger would be much lower. If the two of them worked together, they could even last a few rounds against ordinary powerful demigods. The next day the two of them set off. Very few people knew about this. With the departure of the two of them, the Primal Chaos Continent was destined to be chaotic once again. Previously, with the two of them around, many major forces did not dare to act recklessly, afraid of angering the two of them. The Chaos Ocean was turbulent as if there was no end to it. Green Lotus Sword Saint, this is the divine wine that I personally brewed. Try it. While flying at high speed, the Yin-Yang battle saint tossed a wine gourd to Yi Qin. Taking the wine gourd, Yi Qin took a sip. Good wine. As soon as the wine entered his stomach, Yi Qin felt warm all over his body. It should be known that at his current realm, there were very few wines that could make him feel this way. Correspondingly, the wine that could make him feel this way must be extraordinary. The Yin-Yang battle saint said proudly, I spent 1,000 years brewing this divine wine. There are only 10 gourds. Give me another gourd. Yi Qin smacked his lips. This wine was really good. If you want it, exchange it with something. The Yin-Yang battle saint rolled his eyes at Yi Qin. Did he really think that divine wine was cabbages? He could brew it, but the materials were difficult to find. At most, I'll help you find the materials. Yi Qin laughed. After spending some time together, the two of them were considered familiar and appreciated each other. Wait until you find the person. The two of them chatted as they flew toward the east. In the far east there was a Crimson Continent. Although it was called a continent, it was very high above sea level. The edge of the continent adjacent to the coast was clearly covered with cliffs. In the middle of the Crimson Continent was a river. Chapter 1458. The Primal Chaos Ocean was extremely dangerous. The longer one drifted, the more dangers one would encounter. In 1,000 years, Yi Qin and the Yin-Yang battle saint had encountered 3 level 9 chaos creatures. If it weren't for their outstanding strength and the fact that their soul seas contained the 5 elemental laws and the Yin-Yang laws, they would have died 3 times already. That was close. The Yin-Yang battle saint tossed a gourd of divine wine to Yi Qin. This was the last 2 gourds of divine wine. Go. The Yin-Yang battle saint took a sip first, wiped the corner of his mouth and said, I underestimated the danger of the chaotic ocean. The chances of a high-level demigod reaching the Crimson Continent alive are very low. Staying in the chaotic continent is actually the best choice. Maybe we're just unlucky, Yi Qin said after receiving the divine wine. Then we're really unlucky to encounter 3 level 9 chaos creatures in 1,000 years. If it were anyone else they would have died long ago. The yin-yang battle saint wore a helpless expression. While the two of them were rushing to the Crimson Continent, others were also rushing to the Crimson Continent. Some were already close to the Crimson Continent, while others had just set off. What the two of them didn't know was that there wasn't just one Chaos Continent in the Primal Chaos battlefield. There were a total of 8 of them, and they were located in 8 different directions of the Scarlet Continent. Due to the distance, the 8 Chaos Continents wouldn't interact with each other. Of the 8 Chaos Continents, Yi Chen's direction had the least people. There were only 2 Yi Chen and the Yin-Yang Battle Sage. The Chaos Continent with the most people had 9 life forms heading towards the Scarlet Continent. Rumble. The huge waves reached the sky, and an incomparably huge sea snake darted out of the sea, pouncing toward the 3 universe life forms. Level 9 Chaos Creature, Chaos Sea Divine Snake. Run. Of these 3 cosmic beings, the first 2 had comprehended the law of light and darkness and the law of life and death respectively. The last one was the strangest. His entire body was wrapped in a terrifying energy. The cosmic life form that comprehended the law of light and darkness turned into a beam of chaotic light and shot out. The cosmic life form that comprehended the law of life and death turned into an incorporeal body that existed between life and death like a ghost. As for the last one, he actually did not comprehend the laws, but his strength was not the slightest bit weaker than the first 2. In fact, he even surpassed them. The 3 of them were extremely fast, and it didn't take long for them to shake off the Chaos Sea God Snake. Battle Sage Huangxin, your divine power is truly powerful. We had to use the light and darkness rule power and the life and death rule power to escape from the Chaos Sea Divine Snake, but you only need to use your divine power and you can maintain it for a long time. The cosmic life form that comprehended the law of light and darkness said enviously. Battle Sage Royal Heart was a cosmic life form with a large head and eyes that looked like giant gems. He said proudly, once you activate the light of the soul, you can also refine divine power. Activating light of the soul is easier said than done. I really don't know how a freak like you did it. Haha, why do I feel that it's very easy? On the contrary, comprehending the laws is much more difficult. Battle Sage Royal Heart was both proud and envious. If he could comprehend the principle, his strength would rise to an extremely terrifying level, enough to rival a powerful demigod. Battle Sage Royal Heart was not the only one who had refined divine power. In another direction, there was also a female battle sage called Divine Dancing Archer Sage who had also refined divine power. When she shot an arrow, it could destroy and pierce through everything. Brother, one day I will become a true god and revive you. The godly dancing archer sage looked down at the jade pendant on her chest. It was a gift from her brother. Ancient Fragrance Castle. A green-haired woman dressed in azure clothes said to Murong Qingqing, you are very lucky. Your aptitude can only be considered ordinary compared to others, but in our Ancient Fragrance Castle, it is an extremely good aptitude. Our Ancient Fragrance Castle does not value cultivation aptitude, but rather your innate constitution. The better your innate constitution, the faster your progress in our Ancient Fragrance Castle. Why does our Ancient Fragrance Castle not value cultivation aptitude? Murong Qingqing asked doubtfully. The green-haired woman said, there are 3,000 great Taos, and every one of them can be walked to the extreme. The Tao of our Ancient Fragrance Castle is originally different from other Taos. As for the essence of it, even I only know a little. This is an Ancient Fragrance Divine Vein diagram. How much you can comprehend will depend on your luck. The green-haired woman waved her right hand, and a diagram fell into Murong Qingqing's hand. This was a diagram of fresh flowers. The fresh flowers in the diagram looked vivid and lifelike, even more realistic than real fresh flowers. But upon closer inspection, one could see that the lines of the fresh flowers were very simple, and only a few strokes were needed. Murong Qingqing exclaimed in her heart. Although her cultivation level was not high, she could more or less see that this diagram was very profound. It could only be understood but not explained. Many thanks, Lady Qinghua. Murong Qingqing kept the Ancient Fragrance Divine Vein diagram. The green-haired woman descended from the heaven realm and was a powerful demigod. And the Ancient Fragrance Castle belonged to the mighty true god Ancient Fragrance. Back then, when Murong Qingqing was teleported to the Scarlet Continent, she caught the eye of the true god Ancient Fragrance's envoy and was brought to the Ancient Fragrance Castle. She mysteriously became a member of the Ancient Fragrance Castle. Of course, It was also because of this that her cultivation was able to improve by leaps and bounds. In a short 20,000 years she had already reached the peak of the legendary Paragon realm. In these 1,000 years her improvement was even faster. Under the guidance of the green-haired woman, Murong Qingqing successfully became a demigod. Murong Qingqing had a feeling that if she could comprehend this ancient fragrance divine vein diagram, she should be able to become a beginner demigod. Another 5,000 years passed. Yi Qin and the Yin-Yang battle saint finally saw the Scarlet Continent. From afar the Scarlet Continent gave off a very oppressive feeling. It was as if a continent was about to break out of the water. It was incomparably huge and majestic. There really is a Scarlet Continent, haha. The Yin-Yang battle saint was excited. In reality he did not dare to confirm the existence of the Scarlet Continent and had only heard of it. Yes. Yi Qin was also excited. He had some doubts about the Yin-Yang battle saint's words, but he felt that there was enough time. It did not matter if he accompanied the Yin-Yang battle saint. Let's go. Faster. The Yin-Yang battle saint's speed soared as he swept toward the Scarlet Continent. Yi Qin followed closely behind. In a short while the two of them arrived at the Scarlet Continent. Buzz. An invisible force pulled the two of them to the left continent where there was plenty of light. Two more. Not bad. Around the two of them, powerful life forms appeared one after another. Yi Qin and the Yin-Yang battle saint were shocked to discover that these life forms were no weaker than level 9 chaos creatures. They were obviously powerful demigods. With so many powerful demigods appearing at once, it was hard for the two of them not to be shocked. You are? The Yin-Yang battle saint asked. A female demigod with a pair of butterfly wings on her back said, "We are the messengers of the true gods. We are responsible for receiving you here." Messengers of the true gods? How many true gods are there? Yi Qin was very curious. He wanted to know how many true gods there were. A powerful demigod the size of a small mountain said, "The heaven realm has a total of 7 main gods, namely the Chaos main god, Sword god, Demon god, Undying main god, Destruction main god, Life main god, and Death main god. Every main god has a certain number of follower gods. As for how many true gods there are, we are also not clear because some true gods like to travel alone, no one knows where they are." Chapter 1459. To a certain extent, true gods were no longer afraid of the law of chaos, especially the main gods. They had their own main god world where the law of chaos could not interfere with them. They could completely control the cycle of life and death in the main god world. Although ordinary true gods weren't as powerful as main gods, they could still roam the primal chaos. The primal chaos was too vast. Even true gods couldn't roam the entire primal chaos. Fortunately, true gods had endless lives. They could use their endless lives to explore the primal chaos. Since ancient times, many true gods had been born in the heaven realm. Some true gods were unknown. Other than the main god of chaos, no one knew how many true gods there were. Sword god, Demon god? Yi Qin's heart skipped a beat. He had never heard of Sword god. Demon god was the main god of demons. Of course, this was only Yi Qin's personal opinion. Perhaps the demons were just a random race created by Demon god. After all, as the main god, Demon god could not only create races in the heaven and earth universe. Main god, subordinate god, this is so interesting. The heaven realm is greater and more charming than I imagined. Yin-Yang battle saint yearned. A powerful illusory demigod said coldly, "Don't be happy too early. Although geniuses like you are rare, there are still many of them in all the universes. Moreover, a new batch of universe geniuses is born every million years. Once you enter the heaven realm, you will no longer be as unique as before. If you don't work hard enough, you may soon become a second-rate character. What's the point if there is no challenge?" Yin-Yang battle saint did not take the other's words to heart. Among the 7 overgods, the Chaos overgod is the supreme overgod and is absolutely neutral. The other 6 overgods oppose each other. Our Radiance Divine Alliance has 3 overgods, namely the Sword god, the Immortality overgod, and the Life overgod. The life seeds of the two of you are the life seeds of our Radiance Divine Alliance, which is why you were drawn to the Radiance Continent, which is the Darkness Continent. According to the path of your cultivation, you can choose to join a true god. How do we choose? Yi Qin asked. For now you won't be choosing a true god. The true gods will choose you first. If only one true god chooses you, you can only join that true god. If there are more than one, you can choose one of them. There are 3 overgod stones here. They are the Divine Sword Stone, the Immortal Stone, and the Stone of Life. A powerful demigod filled with boundless vitality pointed at the Yin-Yang Battle Saint. The Yin-Yang Battle Saint took a step forward. The next moment, 3 mysterious stones appeared out of thin air above the Yin-Yang Battle Saint's head. One of the stones lit up. It was the Stone of Life. Your path of cultivation is suitable for the core god of life's deity system. Now you will begin the second stage of the test. The Divine Sword Stone and the Stone of Eternity disappeared, and smaller stones appeared all around the Stone of Life. Each stone carried the aura of the Overgod of Life, but they were all slightly different. Bus, bus, bus. A total of 3 stones lit up. The true God of all things, the Azure God, and the Skylark God are all suitable for your path of cultivation. Please choose one. The Yin-Yang Battle Saint did not speak. He stared at the 3 stones. Although they were only 3 stones, he could see many things. These stones seemed to have been specially refined by a true God. Even if it was just a trace of aura, one could see endless possibilities, see the changes of all things, and see a part of the cultivation path of this true God. It was mysterious and unfathomable. Since I am suitable for the core god of life's deity system, can I choose the core god of life? The Yin-Yang Battle Saint suddenly asked. No. The powerful demigod filled with boundless vitality said, only if the Stone of Life keeps flashing would it mean that the Stone of Life values you. Unfortunately, it doesn't. Alright then. I choose the true God of all things. The Yin-Yang Battle Saint said. Welcome to the Temple of the Universe. The powerful demigod who was the size of a small mountain revealed a smile. The Yin-Yang Battle Saint was quite talented. As the messenger of the true God of all things, he naturally hoped that the Yin-Yang Battle Saint would choose the Temple of the Universe. It's your turn. The powerful demigods looked at Yi Chen. Compared to the Yin-Yang Battle Saint, Yi Chen was clearly a demigod who cultivated the Sword Tao. He should be suitable for the Sword God deity system. Of course, those who cultivated the Sword Tao did not necessarily have to join the Sword God deity system. There were also sword cultivators and other deities. Yi Chen took a step forward. The next moment, 3 Master God stones appeared above Yi Chen's head. Bus, 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 bus. What shocked the powerful demigods was that the Sword God Stone and the Immortal Stone actually flashed at the same time. Even the Stone of Life lit up. This meant that the Sword God Stone and the Immortal Stone had chosen Yi Chen, and Yi Chen could also join the core god of life's deity system. This situation was almost impossible. The Yin-Yang Battle Saint's eyes almost popped out. He was both envious and shocked. Which deity system will you choose? A powerful demigod asked. Yi Chen could choose any of the 3 deities. Yi Chen said, I choose the core god, Sword God. There was no need to consider at all. Yi Chen would naturally choose the Sword God. As for the Sword God's follower god, Yi Chen didn't even consider it. Are you not going to consider the immortal deity? A powerful demigod filled with an immortal aura said, unwilling to give up. Being chosen by the Immortal Stone meant that Yi Chen was the best choice. It would be a pity not to fight for it. There's no need. Yi Chen shook his head. That's good. The powerful demigod filled with an immortal aura sighed and said in a loud voice, Shadowless Sword Saint, are you still not coming out? Your Sword God Palace has gained another member. Without a sound, a powerful demigod with a sharp aura appeared. Who is it? As he spoke, his gaze was fixed on Yi Chen. Ah, good. Welcome to our Sword God Palace. Let me tell you, our Sword God Palace is the hardest to join among the 6 core gods. This is because every member of our Sword God Palace is a true expert of the Sword Tao. Alright, we all know how powerful the Sword God Palace is. Can you stop showing off? The other powerful demigods were extremely envious. Ah. The Shadowless Sword Saint laughed loudly. The woman in your 5 elemental space should come out too. Let's see which true god is suitable for her. Yi Chen's 5 elemental space could fool Yin-Yang battle sages, but it couldn't fool the powerful demigods present. After a while, the results of Su Jing's test came out. Su Jing was also suitable for the Sword God Pantheon, but the Sword God Stone didn't choose her. The ones who chose her were the Desolate God, the Barbarian God, and the Beast God. Su Jing chose the Beast God. Come, follow me to the Sword God Palace. The Shadowless Sword Saint pulled Yi Chen away. Wait. Yi Chen suddenly said, have you seen her? Yi Chen waved his right hand, and the image of Murong Qingqing appeared. I've seen her before. She joined our Ancient Fragrance Castle. Our Ancient Fragrance Castle belongs to the great True God Ancient Fragrance, and True God Ancient Fragrance belongs to the Sword God Pantheon, the powerful demigod with butterfly wings on her back said. She was the envoy of true god ancient fragrance. Chapter 1460. Just like that, Yichen was in the Sword God Palace, Su Jing was in the Beast God Valley, and Murong Qingqing was in the ancient fragrant castle. Although the three of them were not under the same true god, they were from the same celestial system and could meet each other frequently. Yichen gave Murong Qingqing a lot of the divine power crystals that he had obtained to help her become an elementary demigod as soon as possible. Currently, Murong Qingqing was a demigod and Su Jing was slightly weaker at the peak of the legendary supremacy. However, after joining the Beast God Valley, there should be a period of rapid development, and it would not be difficult for her to reach the demigod level. After getting rid of his worries, Yichen started to calm down and focus on his cultivation. Just like what the Sword God emissary Shadowless Sword Saint had said, it was very difficult to join the Sword God Palace. In the entire Scarlet Continent, the Sword God Palace only had Yichen. The other true gods had more or less some members under them. When the Primal Chaos battlefield opened, many people were directly teleported to the Scarlet Continent, and Murong Qingqing was one of them. What is a sword? A will that can move unhindered in the primal chaos. The reason why the members of the Sword God Palace can fight 1 against 10 is not because of our high cultivation, but because we have a sharp sword in our hearts that can cut through all restraints. The Shadowless Sword Saint thought very highly of Yichen. In the Heaven Domain there were not many members of the Sword God Palace. Although he was a Sword God emissary, there was nothing special about him. As long as one was a member of the Sword God Palace, anyone could become a Sword God emissary. However, Yichen was different. Since he was chosen by the Sword God Stone and the Immortal Stone, and the Stone of Life did not reject him, it meant that he was really special. He might even become a peak figure in the Sword God Palace and lead the Sword God Palace into battle. Such a person naturally had to be treated with caution. Is it because of the Sword of Soul? Yichen said. That's right. Although the Sword of the Soul is also part of the Light of the Soul, it's definitely the best of the Light of the Soul. With the Sword of the Soul as the core, the divine power condensed is invincible and unstoppable. You haven't reached the realm of the Sword of the Soul yet, and you haven't condensed divine power, so the gap between you and others isn't that great. Once you reach that stage, the gap will start to show. Before that, you must think of a way to research Heart Force and focus most of your energy on Heart Force, with laws taking second place. In fact, although your current realm of laws isn't comparable to most powerful demigods, most demigods haven't comprehended the 5 elements or the laws of yin and yang like you have. For example, I only comprehended the laws of shadow and wind. The Shadowless Sword Saint's figure flickered, and suddenly, 8 Shadowless Sword Saints appeared. 7 of them were shadows. When the shadows dissipated, the Shadowless Sword Saint turned and a whirlwind rushed into the sky. The Shadowless Sword Saint's figure immediately became blurry, and he came and went without a trace. This was the advanced wind walking technique, which had already been integrated into the laws of wind. What a high realm! Yichen was secretly shocked. He could see that the Shadowless Sword Saint's 7 shadows all had very high combat power, and they were almost no weaker than the original body. Moreover, the Shadowless Sword Saint's wind walking technique was integrated with the laws of wind. Not to mention chasing the opponent, he did not even know where the opponent was. How could he chase after the opponent? This had already reached another level. The Shadowless Sword Saint explained, when you reach the level of the Sword of Soul, it will be much easier to comprehend the laws. At that time, you will be one of the strongest demigods. The Shadowless Sword Saint was very envious of Yichen and the Yin-Yang Battle Sage. Of the 2 of them, one had comprehended the laws of 5 elements, and the other had comprehended the laws of Yin-Yang. When they condensed their divine power, it would be amazing. This word was personally written by the Great Sword God. Although it is only a projection and the real body is in the Heaven Domain Sword God Palace, to you and me, it is still a great inspiration. You can look at it often and find out the mysteries within. The Shadowless Sword Saint brought Yichen to the core of the Sword God Palace. There was a stone tablet there and the word sword was written on it. The word sword had a total of 9 strokes. Yichen realized that this word only had 1 stroke. Although it was only 1 stroke, it did not affect the overall effect. It was as if the word sword was in a complex space-time, and the connection could be seen but not found. How amazing! Yichen was completely immersed in it, and he did not even know when the Shadowless Sword Saint left. In the blink of an eye, 1,000 years had passed and Yichen woke up. 1,000 years have passed? Yichen could not feel the passage of time at all, and he did not feel that he had comprehended anything. It was as if 1,000 years had passed in the blink of an eye. That's normal. When I first saw this word, it took me 3,000 years to wake up. You are already very fast. The shadowless sword saint suddenly appeared and said with a smile. Time no longer had much meaning to demigods. The golden martial path Yuan spirit could allow the weakest elementary demigod to live for more than 100 million years. Every once in a while, Yi Qin would come to observe the word, sword. The first time he woke up after 1,000 years. The second time it was 800 years. The third time it was 500 years. The fourth time it was 300 years. The fifth time it was 100 years. The sixth time it was also 100 years. Unknowingly, it had been 40,000 years since Yi Qin came to the primal chaos battlefield. Straight but not straight, curved but not curved. There is a curve in the straight and a straight in the curve. Illusory and real change, and it all depends on one's heart. As he chanted, a faint misty light was emitted from within Yi Qin's body, and it was abnormally sharp. This is really special. In such a short time he found the entrance to the Sword of Soul. The shadowless sword saint praised. It was very difficult to reach the Sword of Soul level. Some people spent countless years and couldn't even find the entrance. Yi Qin hadn't reached the Sword of Soul level yet, but at least he found the entrance. As long as the time was right, he would definitely step into this realm. When Yi Qin woke up, the misty light suddenly dissipated. On the 45,000 years since Yi Qin came to the primal chaos battlefield, a powerful demigod from the Sword God Palace descended. Shadowless Sword Saint, long time no see. This powerful demigod clearly recognized the Shadowless Sword Saint and smiled. The Shadowless Sword Saint sized up the other party. Sweet Dew Sword Saint, I didn't expect you to descend. The Sweet Dew Sword Saint's status in the Sword God Palace was higher than his. She had comprehended the law of water, the law of wood, and the law of wind. It's rare for my Sword God Palace to have a new member. How is his talent? The Sweet Dew Sword Saint asked. His talent is very good. He has comprehended the law of 5 elements and has already found the entrance to the Sword of Soul. Oh really? He has actually comprehended the law of 5 elements? The Sweet Dew Sword Saint was somewhat curious. She spread her divine energy and instantly discovered Yi Qin, who was observing the word. Transforming into a drop of sweet dew, the Sweet Dew Sword Saint instantly appeared above Yi Qin. He didn't disturb Yi Qin and just waited quietly. After 100 years, Yi Qin woke up and discovered the Sweet Dew Sword Saint and the Shadowless Sword Saint. The Shadowless Sword Saint introduced, "This is the Sweet Dew Sword Saint. This time he descended and brought you a Sword Dao Divine Inscription diagram. If there's anything you don't understand, you can ask him. Naturally, you can also ask me." Sword Dao Divine Inscription diagrams were extremely precious. One could only bring them down with the permission of the higher-ups. However, there seemed to be something new in his heart, and he would occasionally have a flash of inspiration. Shadowless Sword Saint, how long do you think it will take for him to comprehend the divine skill? In a pavilion of the Sword God Palace, the Sweet Dew Sword Saint and the Shadowless Sword Saint were drinking and chatting. Occasionally they would look at Yi Qin's progress through space. After drinking a mouthful of wine, the Shadowless Sword Saint spoke in a low voice. In our Sword God Palace, the fastest person to comprehend the first divine art is the Idealistic Sword Saint. He spent 30,000 years. The second fastest is the Incomparable Sword Saint, spending 35,000 years. As for the Green Lotus Sword Saint, his talent is extremely high. I estimate that he would also spend 50,000 years or less. The Sweet Dew Sword Saint nodded. Back then, the Idealistic Sword Saint comprehended the laws of yin and yang, the Incomparable Sword Saint comprehended the laws of life and death, while the Green Lotus Sword Saint comprehended the laws of the 5 elements. Their foundations are roughly the same, and the difficulty of comprehending a divine art is roughly the same as well. If there are no accidents, he should be able to comprehend his first divine art within 50,000 years. It could be said that comprehending a divine art wasn't difficult, but it wasn't simple either. Sometimes, with a flash of inspiration, a divine art might appear. Naturally, for the same divine inscription diagram, the divine art comprehended by each person would be different. Under the situation where the foundations were the same depending on one's comprehension abilities, the divine art comprehended would be slightly weaker, slightly stronger, and also similar. However, the style of the divine art comprehended would be different. The Undying Deity Palace's luck is truly off the charts this time around. That divine dance archer saint, although he didn't comprehend any laws, he has condensed godly energy. His combat prowess is unrivaled in the entire primal chaos battlefield. The topic shifted to the divine dance archer saint as the shadowless sword saint spoke. After condensing godly energy, comprehending the laws is only a matter of time. But after comprehending the laws, condensing godly energy would take a very long time. The undying deity palace has truly picked up a treasure. The sweet dew sword saint sighed in admiration. The powers of the god lords were all deity palaces. The sword god palace belonged to the sword god palace, the undying god palace belonged to the undying god palace, the life god palace belonged to the life god palace, the devil god palace belonged to the devil god palace, the destruction god palace belonged to the destruction god palace, the death god palace belonged to the death god palace, and the primal chaos god palace belonged to the primal chaos god palace. However, over at the darkness continent, the destruction deity palace also has a new member that has condensed godly energy. His name is the Royal Heart Battle Sage. There are so many universes in the primal chaos battlefield, and the primal chaos battlefield only opens once every million years. It's inevitable that there would be some demon-level geniuses appearing. It's not worth being surprised. With regards to these demon-level geniuses, although the sweet dew sword saint was filled with admiration, he wouldn't be shocked. He had lived for countless years and had seen all sorts of characters before. The Sword God Palace's idealistic Sword Saint and lofty Sword Saint were both extremely outstanding characters. However, even now they had yet to break through to the true God realm. Compared to a true God, geniuses weren't even worth mentioning. Year 65,000 since Yi Chen arrived at the primal chaos battlefield. Drifting blood. Staring at the few drops of blood on the painting, Yi Chen could feel a desolate and cruel aura. This aura grew stronger and stronger, causing Yi Chen to gain new insights with every passing moment. Year 68,000 in the primal chaos battlefield. A sharp aura suddenly gushed forth from Yi Chen as the few drops of blood flashed past. The hearts of the shadowless sword saint and the sweet dew sword saint jolted as they hurriedly glanced over. This aura? The shadowless sword saint had a look of bewilderment on his face. This is the sign of comprehending a divine art. He has already sensed the essence of the divine inscription painting. As long as the essence is present, no matter how the divine art transforms, its might would still be the same. Year 70,000 in the primal chaos battlefield. So this is the case. Yi Chen opened his eyes. He raised his right index and middle fingers and tapped out. In the air, a few drops of blood flashed past as the stench of blood permeated the air. Even though they were separated by space-time, the shadowless sword saint and the sweet dew sword saint could still smell the stench of blood. 25,000 years. He comprehended it faster than the idealistic sword saint and lofty sword saint. The shadowless sword saint and the sweet dew sword saint exchanged glances. The speed of comprehending the first divine art didn't mean that Yi Chen's comprehension was higher than the idealistic sword saint and the lofty sword saint. But at the very least, it meant that Yi Chen was a genius on the same level as the idealistic sword saint. After countless years, the idealistic sword saint and the lofty sword saint had long reached the pinnacle of the demigod realm. Below the true god realm, they were almost invincible. Is this the power of a divine art? The energy is completely restrained and condensed within a few drops of blood. The 5 elemental laws also naturally fused into it. Before this, Yi Chen's strongest attack was the 5 elemental laws. Chapter 1462. The Radiance Continent and the Darkness Continent were separated by a mountain range called the Scarlet Mountain Range. Legend had it that the Scarlet Mountain Range was stained with the blood of a true god and contained divine stones. However, ordinary people couldn't enter the Scarlet Mountain Range. The pressure of the mountain range was enough to crush mid-level demigods to death. Only high-level demigods could resist the pressure. A streak of fire flew up the mountain. It was Yi Chen. In order for a divine artifact to upgrade, it had to absorb divine stones. The law fragment could only upgrade one aspect of the divine artifact, not all aspects. Since the Scarlet Mountain Range contained a large number of divine stones, Yi Chen naturally wouldn't miss this opportunity. Other than the Firmament Sword, he wanted to get a few more Sky Sage artifact swords. If possible, it would be even better if he could upgrade it to 4 or even 5 stars. The Scarlet Mountain Range was desolate, and there was a faint aura that made one's heart palpitate. It was as if mortals were in the wilderness, filled with helplessness and desolation. After flying past a mountain, Yichen suddenly stopped. BFFF. A few drops of blood flew out and a big hole appeared on the mountain. After entering the hole, Yichen found a stone pillar covered with divine stones. At a glance there were at least 30 of them. After cutting off the divine stones, Yichen flew out of the hole and continued his search. Searching for divine stones was very boring. Sometimes one couldn't find a single divine stone even after 100 years. Of course, there were times when one was lucky and could find over 100 divine stones in a day. In the blink of an eye, 5,000 years had passed, and Yichen had finally obtained more than 1,000 divine stones. 1,000 divine stones wasn't a small number. One had to know that a supreme weapon could become a 1-star Earth Sage artifact after fusing one divine stone. A 1-star Earth Sage artifact with 9 divine stones would become a 1-star Sky Sage artifact. A 1-star Sky Sage artifact with 80 divine stones would become a 9-star Sky Sage artifact, and a 9-star Sky Sage artifact with 100 divine stones would become a divine artifact. Divine artifacts were the weapons of true gods. There were only 3 ways for a demigod to obtain a divine artifact. The first was to be specially refined by a true god, the second was to be extremely lucky and obtain an ownerless divine artifact, and the last was to use divine stones to upgrade it. No matter which one it was, it would be extremely difficult. Yichen had a lot of Earth Saint swords, more than 300 of them. Half a month had passed, and 1,000 divine stones had been used up. Yichen now had 79-star Earth Saint swords in his possession. Unfortunately, he had also destroyed 50 Earth Saint swords in this period of time. In the middle of everyone was a dazzling pit. Inside the pit, countless divine stones lay, sparkling and glaring. Clearly, someone had found the divine stone pit. Unfortunately, the commotion was too big and it attracted the nearby people. Then, a great battle broke out and it became the current chaotic battle. At least 10,000. Yichen estimated the number of divine stones. Green Lotus Sword Sage, come and help. When the time comes, we will divide the divine stones among ourselves. In the Radiance continent, everyone knew each other. This was the time to unite. Okay. Yichen joined the battle without hesitation. He did not think of monopolizing the divine stones. Otherwise, not only would he annoy the people of the Radiance continent, but he would also become the target of public criticism. Originally, the Radiance continent was in a slight disadvantage. After Yichen joined in, the Radiance continent immediately suppressed the people of the Darkness continent. Yichen's opponent was called the Revolution Battle Sage. He had comprehended the law of life and death. Unfortunately, he had not comprehended a divine skill. Although he had many tricks up his sleeve, he was still in a difficult situation under the divine skill Floating Blood. I can't stop him. The Revolution Battle Sage shouted. He had already used the power of the law of life and death. Seeing that the power of the law of life and death was diminishing, he panicked and wanted to ask for help. Revolution Battle Sage, let's change opponents. A voice came. The Revolution Battle Sage looked over and saw the Black Blood Battle Sage. The Black Blood Battle Sage had comprehended a divine skill 3,000 years ago, and his strength was second only to the Royal Heart Battle Sage. Okay. The Revolution Battle Sage hurriedly flew to the Black Blood Battle Sage. Your opponent is me. The Black Blood Battle Sage blocked Yichen. You can't stop me. With the Firmament Sword in hand, Yichen continuously performed the divine skill Floating Blood. Let's give it a try. The Black Blood Battle Sage also performed the divine skill. Numerous blurry black sparrows flew out, bringing with them the aura of doomsday. The blood and the black sparrows collided, triggering a series of shock waves. However, Yichen was obviously stronger. A drop of blood splashed on the Black Blood Battle Sage. The drop of blood seemed small, but the impact was extremely terrifying, sending the Black Blood Battle Sage flying. After comprehending the divine skill Floating Blood, Yichen did not waste his time. Floating Blood was becoming more and more perfect. It was not something that the Black Blood Battle Sage, who had only comprehended the divine skill for 3,000 years, could compare to. Chapter 1463. Because he had comprehended a godly technique, the Black Blood Battle Sage's attack power was much stronger than that of the Revolving Wheel Battle Sage. However, his defense was not as strong as the Revolving Wheel Battle Sage. When this drop of blood hit him, he felt as though his body was about to explode. His golden martial path primordial spirit was damaged. Why is his divine skill so powerful? Black Blood Battle Sage could not understand. No wonder the revolving Battle Sage had comprehended the rule of life and death, which allowed him to ignore damage to a certain extent. Take another strike from me. Yi Chen wielded the firmament sword and attacked again with the floating blood divine skill. Black Blood Battle Sage had no choice but to use the rule of yin and yang. Previously, Black Blood Battle Sage's divine skill contained a separate rule of yin and yang. Now, with the complete rule of yin and yang, the form of the divine skill changed. Not only did the black sparrow become clearer, its eyes turned from black to gray, and its claws also turned from black to gray. Only its feathers remained black. Squeak, squeak, squeak. The black sparrow let out a doomsday-like cry and swooped down at Yi Chen. Rumble. The blood and the black sparrow collided and died together. However, at this moment, several black feathers passed through the chaotic airflow and shot at Yi Chen. Ding, ding, ding. Using his fingers as a sword, Yi Chen smashed the black feathers. The combination of the rule of yin and yang with the divine skill is indeed extraordinary. Yi Chen's eyes brightened as he integrated the rule of 5 elements into the floating blood divine skill. Previously, the floating blood divine skill was a few drops of fresh blood. Now it was a few drops of bright blood that emitted a 5-colored light, looking even sharper. Black Blood Battle Sage could not block this attack. A drop of blood penetrated his chest, and blood flowed out of all his orifices. Before coming to the Crimson Continent, except for the Royal Heart Battle Sage and the Divine Dancing Archer Sage, everyone's strength was about the same. Now, however, whoever comprehended the divine skill would be stronger. Those who had not comprehended the divine skill were instantly at a disadvantage, such as the Revolving Battle Sage. Relying on the power of the floating blood divine skill, Yi Chen suppressed Black Blood Battle Sage badly, even worse than the Revolving Battle Sage. The Revolving Battle Sage focused on defense, which was much better. No, I can't take it anymore. Battle Sage Blackblood's face was pale. In just a short period of time, his martial primordial spirit had sustained significant damage. If this continued, it would be detrimental to his future cultivation. In his opinion, only the Royal Heart Battle Sage was a match for Yi Chen. Since they couldn't win, they could only escape. After spending 450 divine stones, 3 of the 12 2-star Heaven Saint swords were upgraded to 3-star Heaven Saint swords. In the end, Yi Chen was left with 300 divine stones. Let's take a gamble. It was time to upgrade the Firmament Sword to a 4-star Heaven Saint sword. If he was unlucky and the Firmament Sword was damaged, he would still have 3 3-star Heaven Saint swords. After taking a deep breath, Yi Chen tried to fuse the divine stones into the Firmament Sword. 2 hours passed. Bust. The Firmament Sword chi surged, and the sword hummed incessantly. Yi Chen's luck was pretty good. The Firmament Sword successfully upgraded to a 4-star Heaven Saint sword. After reaching the level of a 4-star Sky Saint weapon, the Sky Sword source had become a lot richer, and the space, wind and water laws inside had also become more complete. Yi Chen estimated that right now, even if he did not use the power of the 5 elements, he would still be able to beat the Black Blood Battle Saint using the power of the yin and yang laws. Every time a Sky Saint weapon reached a star level, its power would increase by at least a couple of times. Unknowingly, 100,000 years passed. On this day, countless streams of light flew toward the Scarlet Continent from all directions. Then, the gigantic Scarlet Continent broke out of the water and soared into the sky like a divine turtle. The Scarlet Continent flew. How terrifying is the power needed to make the entire continent fly? Some people exclaimed. This should be the means of a true god. Mortals can't imagine it. The Scarlet Continent was wrapped in a primal chaos light. It led everyone through time and space and flew into the sky. It kept flying as if there was no end. The true god emissary on the Scarlet Continent didn't stay idle either. He started to test everyone. The results were out. The Sword God Palace still only had Yi Chen. The Immortal Palace had one more person. Including the Divine Archer Sage, there were 2 people. The Life God Palace also had 2 people. Apart from these 3 main god factions, the other true god factions all had many members. However, Yi Chen didn't see Duguju and the others. This made him sigh. If he missed this opportunity, it would be 1,000,000 years before he could enter the Heaven Realm again. Of course, 1,000,000 years wasn't long. Maybe in 1,000,000 years, Duguju would already be a demigod. After an unknown amount of time, the Scarlet Continent passed through a thin membrane. We've entered the Heaven Realm. The Sweet Dew Sword Sage and the Shadowless Sword Sage smiled. Yi Chen raised his head in confusion. Other than the first free Sword Dao Divine Inscription, you will have to use contribution points to exchange for new Sword Dao Divine Inscription diagrams. Sword Dao Divine Inscription diagrams are divided into 3 grades: beginner, mid-grade and high-grade. The worst beginner Sword Dao Divine Inscription diagram requires 100,000 contribution points, the best one requires over 100 million contribution points, and the worst mid-grade one requires 1 billion contribution points. The best one requires over 50 billion contribution points, not to mention the high-grade one. I see. Hearing Dan Yun's Sword Saint's explanation, Yi Chen also felt that he would never have enough contribution points. Although he had already comprehended an initial grade Floating Blood Divine Inscription, Yi Chen also knew that it wasn't enough. In the future he would definitely have to comprehend mid-grade divine inscriptions, or even high-grade ones. Dan Yun's Sword Saint continued, "In our Sword God Palace, there are over 1,000 initial grade Sword Dao Divine Inscription diagrams. Although I'm untalented, I've already comprehended 15 initial grade divine inscriptions. Normally speaking, the more initial grade divine inscriptions you comprehend, the higher the chances of comprehending a mid-grade one. If not, even if you were given a mid-grade divine inscription diagram, you might not be able to comprehend it." Yes. Yi Chen nodded. "This is the Saint Weapon Pagoda. Other than Saint Swords, there are all kinds of Saint Weapons here. This is the Mission Pagoda. As long as you have enough contribution points, you can issue missions of a certain difficulty. For example, asking people to help you search for materials, asking people to help you uncover secrets." The area of the initial grade Sword Saint Island was extremely vast. After a few months, Dan Yun's Sword Saint finally brought Yi Chen across half of the island. "This is the Sword Discourse Arena. Your luck isn't bad." Sword Saint Snowheart is currently practicing her initial grade divine inscriptions. Today the two of them arrived at a gigantic island. In the center of the island there was a square-shaped platform. On the platform, a female Sword Saint was currently practicing her swordsmanship. Around the platform, a sea of people could be seen. "The swordsmanship I'm practicing now is the initial grade divine inscription diagram I comprehended from the 128th initial grade Sword Dao Divine Inscription diagram. Watch carefully." The silver-haired Sword Saint Snowheart had pointy ears and a tall stature. She held her breath and slashed out with her sword. In the air, snowflakes danced as a teardrop of sword chi pierced through the air. This teardrop was extremely inconspicuous, it didn't emit any energy fluctuations at all. Yet it contained a soul-stirring might. From afar Yi Chen could already feel his Yuan Shen being pierced through. He believed that it was the same for the others. Chapter 1466. This is the elementary grade divine art I comprehended from the 160th elementary grade divine inscription diagram, sky blue. This is the elementary grade divine art I comprehended from the 172nd elementary grade divine inscription diagram, suspended sound sword. Sword Saint Snowheart performed dozens of primary godly skills in one breath. He performed each skill 9 times. During these 9 times, sometimes it was fast, sometimes it was slow, sometimes it was fast, sometimes it was slow, sometimes it was fast and sometimes it was slow. Sometimes it was split up and performed in segments. He tried his best to let the audience see it clearly, to reduce the difficulty of comprehending it. Sword Saint Scarlet Cloud, how many elementary grade divine arts has Sword Saint Snowheart comprehended? Yi Chen exclaimed. Sword Saint Scarlet Cloud replied, according to what I know, a few million years ago, Sword Saint Snowheart comprehended over 200 elementary grade divine arts. I wonder if he has comprehended any new elementary grade divine arts in the past few million years. Not only that, Sword Saint Snowheart has comprehended 6 mid-grade divine arts. In terms of strength, he can be considered as one of the strongest ultimate sword saints in our Sword God Palace. Amazing. Yi Chen sighed in admiration. He had spent 25,000 years to comprehend the elementary grade divine art, Drifting Blood. But even now he had yet to completely perfect it. Yi Chen didn't need to ask to know that Sword Saint Snowheart had already comprehended over 200 elementary grade divine arts. If not, he wouldn't have taken them out to show off. Yi Chen didn't leave. He carefully observed Sword Saint Snowheart's performance of the elementary grade divine arts. Although it was the same divine inscription diagram, every Sword Saint would comprehend different elementary grade divine arts. But no matter what, they all originated from the same source. Watching others executing their divine arts, one would more or less gain some insights and inspiration. Within 10 days, Sword Saint Snowheart demonstrated a total of 272 elementary grade divine arts. That was an average of 20 to 30 elementary grade divine arts per day. After he finished, Sword Saint Snowheart departed. Aha, my sword Chidansha is finally perfected. The Dan Cloud Sword Saint laughed uproariously. The sword Chi Rosy Glow was the initial grade divine inscription he comprehended from the 350th set of divine inscriptions. The higher the number, the more difficult it was to comprehend. But correspondingly, the power of the divine inscriptions would also be greater. Generally speaking, no initial grade sword saint would be willing to slowly comprehend an initial grade divine inscription according to the number of the divine inscriptions. If they did that, the increase in their strength would be too slow. To Yi Qin, the puppet sword saint on the first level was too weak. With just a light strike, Yi Qin defeated it and arrived at the second level. After 10 minutes, Yi Qin passed the first level of the Sword God Pagoda. Ring. A sword ring rang out, and the Sword God Pagoda shone brightly. In the elementary Sword Saint Island region, many initial grade sword saints looked over from afar. Another person passed the 9th level. The 9th level is not very difficult. I have already made it to the 11th level. I wonder which level this person can reach. Most initial grade sword saints could make it to the 9th level. Hence, it was not surprising that people often passed the 9th level. One had to apply to enter the intermediate Sword Saint Island region. 3 days later, Yi Qin was allowed to enter the intermediate Sword Saint Island region. Yi Qin walked in front of the second Sword God Pagoda. He was allowed to pass through the first 9 levels. The 10th level. The 11th level. The 12th level. Yi Qin passed all the way to the 13th level in one go. Although the Scarlet Cloud Sword Saint had comprehended 15 types of divine arts, his overall strength was not much stronger than Yi Qin. This was because the Scarlet Cloud Sword Saint had only comprehended 2 types of divine arts. They were the divine arts of water and divine arts of fire. When he reached the 13th level, Yi Qin was finally stalled. Even after activating the 5 elemental divine arts, he was still unable to defeat the Puppet Sword Saint. The Puppet Sword Saint's attack was only slightly weaker than Yi Qin when he went all out, and Yi Qin's 5 elemental divine arts could not be sustained for long. After dispersing the 5 elemental divine arts, Yi Qin was sent flying by the Puppet Sword Saint. He failed to pass the 13th level. A total of 499,500 contribution points. A satisfied smile appeared on Yi Qin's face. It was already very good to have such a result on his first time in the Sword God Pagoda. The contribution points were also sufficient to exchange for 1 or 2 of the 4 elementary Sword Dao Divine Inscription diagrams. The first elementary Sword Dao Divine Inscription diagram required 100,000 contribution points, the second 200,000 contribution points, the third 300,000 contribution points, the fourth 1,000,000 contribution points, so on and so forth. Back then, the elementary Sword Dao Divine Inscription diagram that Yi Qin comprehended was not bad. It was the 5th one. After considering for a moment, Yi Qin decided to exchange for the first elementary Sword Dao Divine Inscription diagram. Everything had to be done from the beginning. It was not a good habit to bite off more than one could chew. Only with a solid foundation would one be able to comprehend divine arts faster and faster. The first elementary Sword Dao Divine Inscription diagram required 100,000 contribution points. There were still slightly over 300,000 left. Chapter 1468. Sword Heart Island was vast and boundless. It was as big as the chaotic land. On the east side of Sword Heart Island stood a stone stele. This stone stele was huge and it was 1,000,000 zhang tall. On the stone stele there was a black word, sword. The word, sword, was like a living creature, constantly moving about as if it was executing a peerless sword art. However, upon closer inspection, the word, sword, had not moved at all. The word sword was special. It seemed to be able to transmit images through time and space. No matter how far it was, it could be seen. Of course, the farther away it was, the less power it had to bear. Correspondingly, it would be less enlightened. In front of the stone stele, there were many seats arranged in a fan shape. They were simple cushions. The cushions were far away from each other so they wouldn't disturb others. There were thousands of rows. Yi Qin and Sword Saint stopped at the 2500th row. Yi Qin said, "Sword Saint, I want to go a bit further." "Alright, don't force yourself." The Scarlet Cloud Sword Saint had already gotten used to this. Although Yi Qin's overall power was not as strong as his ability to endure the power of the word was much stronger than his. In fact, the Sword Saint could still move forward a few hundred rows, but that would be close to his limit. It would be very hard to comprehend the word when he was close to his limit, and he would not be able to maintain it for a long time. Sword Saint found a seat nearby and sat down cross-legged. He started to look at the word. The word was too powerful. The entire Sword Heart Island felt like it was covered in mercury. The air was as heavy as water. Every step forward was a burden. Yi Qin stopped at the 1800th row. Before condensing godly power, Yi Qin could only reach this point. If he went any further, he wouldn't be able to concentrate. Those who were in front of him were all sword saints who had condensed godly power. The word, sword, written by the sword god was boundlessly profound, as if it was the origin of the sword Tao. Looking at the word, sword, could not only improve one's heart energy, it could improve other aspects as well. Of course, this improvement couldn't be achieved overnight. It was like the absorption of nutrients. The better the absorption, the more nutrients one would absorb. As for those who couldn't absorb it well, they would still be able to improve after a long period of accumulation. Sensing the power of the word, Yi Qin tried his best to observe the word, trying to understand its profoundness. After 100 years, the Danyun Sword Saint left. Many people left, but many people came. The number of people didn't change much. It's Sword Saint Limitless. Sword Saint Limitless is here. A voice somehow reached Yi Qin's ears. Shifting his gaze away from the word, Yi Qin raised his head. A figure flew across the sky. This figure was not very tall and bald, but his back and shoulders were very wide and thick. He wore a gray robe and had a kind face. His eyes were very gentle, but this kind of gentleness was not one without anger. Instead, it was a gentleness that had seen through everything. Infinite Sword Saint. Yi Qin thought to himself. Limitless Sword Saint was one of the two ultimate Sword Saints of Sword God Palace. Apart from idealistic Sword Saint, he was the existence closest to the true God realm of Sword Tao. Of course, before becoming a true god, he was still in the realm of Sword Saint. His temperament was vastly different from that of a true god. Yi Qin quickly retracted his attention and continued reading the word. After 50 years, Yi Qin stood up. I have surpassed my limit. Yi Qin flew towards the exit of Sword Heart Island as fast as lightning. Every time he came to Sword Heart Island, Yi Qin would push himself to his limit and then surpass it. It was very dangerous. If he was lucky, he would go mad. If he was not lucky, his mind would break. It had happened before. The reason why Yi Qin dared to do this was because he didn't think it was as dangerous as he thought it would be. The limit of life wasn't fixed. Sometimes you thought it was your limit, but as long as you had a strong will, you could break it. Of course, don't overestimate your will. There was a limit to everything. The real danger was in this limit. If you could control it well, it wouldn't be too dangerous and you could improve quickly. If you didn't, something bad would happen sooner or later. I've improved again. After leaving Sword Heart Island, Yi Qin sensed that his heart power was more condensed. When it was condensed to the extreme, it would give birth to the light of the soul, which was the sword of the soul. Mission Tower. Thousands of missions would be issued in the Mission Tower every day. According to the difficulty, the missions were divided into 9 levels. From low to high they were 1-star, 2-star, 3-star and the hardest 9-star. 1-star to 3-star missions corresponded to sword saints who hadn't condensed God power. 4-star to 6-star missions corresponded to sword saints who had condensed God power. 7-star to 9-star missions corresponded to ultimate sword saints, especially the 9-star missions. Only the idealistic sword saint and infinite sword saint had completed them. The mission tower had a total of 9 floors. The first floor corresponded to 1-star missions, the second floor corresponded to 2-star missions, and so on. The reward for 1-star missions wasn't very generous. The highest reward was 1,000. Although it could be accumulated, as long as one completed a lot of 1-star missions, one could still get a lot of contribution points. Yi Qin didn't want to go through so much trouble. The highest reward for 2-star missions was 5,000. The highest reward for 3-star missions was 30,000. Chapter 1470. I can't. After a while you will be stronger than me. Dan Yun's sword saint was upset. Yi Chen was improving way too fast. He had mastered the 350th godly skill, Sword Qi Danxia. When he waved his sword, the sword qi was like a red cloud, but he still couldn't suppress Yi Chen. Yi Chen's 100th godly skill, Soul Slash, kept tearing him apart. Again. The best way to perfect a godly skill was to fight. As he fought with Dan Yun's sword saint, Yi Chen's Soul Slash was getting better and better. Of course, it was also because Snowheart Sword Saint had practiced the 100th godly skill, but his 100th godly skill was called Cold Heart Slash. Come on. I'm going to try my best. Dan Yun's Sword Saint looked serious. The sword qi became denser like the red clouds in the sky, red like blood. Like the spring wind and rain, Yi Chen's Soul Slash was broken by the sword qi. It was no longer as strong as before. Finally, Yi Chen couldn't block Dan Yun's Sword Saint's attack anymore, and he was blown away. Even though Dan Yun's Sword Saint didn't master the complementarity element, his fire element and water element were at a high level, at least higher than Yi Chen's. After all, he hadn't been cultivating for a long time. However, fire element and water element were much weaker than the 5 elements, so it didn't matter how high his level was. In terms of godly skills, Dan Yun's Sword Saint was much stronger than Yi Chen. The 100th godly skill couldn't compare to the 350th godly skill. Dan Yun's Sword Qi Danxia was perfected, while Yi Chen's Soul Slash was still lacking. Therefore, when Dan Yun's Sword Saint got serious, Yi Chen wasn't a match for him. He was easily blown away. Impressive. Yi Chen flipped in the air and landed on the ground. They were just fighting, so Dan Yun's Sword Saint didn't use too much power. He held back at the critical moment, otherwise Yi Chen wouldn't have gotten out of it. Don't compliment me. My godly skills are just a bit better than yours. The Dan Cloud Sword Saint smiled bitterly. With the Scarlet Cloud Sword Saint as his training partner, Yi Chen's speed of perfecting his Soul Slash had increased by leaps and bounds. Most importantly, he had seen the Snow Heart Sword Saint perform the 100th divine skill, and its charm had been imprinted in his mind for a long time. Relying on his frightening comprehension of the Sword Tao, Yi Chen had shortened the time required for perfecting the Soul Slash by hundreds of times. It had only taken him 2,000 years to completely perfect the Soul Slash, which was much faster than perfecting the previous 10 divine skills. On the 15th floor of the Sword God Pagoda. On the 16th floor of the Sword God Pagoda. After perfecting the divine technique Soul Severing, Yi Chen immediately went to challenge the Divine Sword Pagoda.